Welcome to the Jaybefaunt channel. I am your host, Jaybefaunt Leroy. So good to see all of you here on this Tuesday afternoon. Yes, Jaybefaunt is back. So good to have all of you here joining with me. Just to let you guys know, the Jaybefaunt channel is also available. Is also part of the Revolutionary Blackout Network. So you guys can find me there on Thursdays for the Savvy and JB show and Sundays for the JB show. So with that being said, also, if you guys have not, go ahead and give a like to the stream. Helps me out so very much. Thank you in advance for that. Also, if you guys would like to, you guys can subscribe to my Substack at jaybefaunt.substack.com so you guys can get those email notifications whenever I go live, upload clips, or write any articles. And also, if you guys like to ask me a question and you guys want a video response or a reaction to a video, you guys can go ahead and go through QBounty at qbounty.com/jaybefaunt. So thank you very much there. Just to good see everybody that's also here in the chat, also who watching on Twitter as well as on Rumble. Nice to have you all here. We are going to be getting right into the stories that we're going to be talking about today. One of the things that I would like to do, because I do have a guest, I want to be very respectful of his time. So what we're going to do is we're going to go over what we're going to be talking about a little bit later today, and then we're going to get right into the conversation. So we're going to be talking about a couple of things. So later in the show today, I actually have some good news that I'll be sharing. And we're going to be ending on a very happy note. Medical debt cleared. This is a story that came across my view. And I think this is some positive news that a lot of us are going to want to hear. I know that even people close to family members of mine that have gotten this blessing in disguise, as far as this medical debt being cleared. So we're going to talk about it. It is a more local story, so I can't wait to get into that. A little bit later, also in the show today, we're going to be talking about Mayor Baraka, the mayor of Newark, New Jersey, being detained by ICE. So we're going to be talking about the situation surrounding that as well. But the first story we're going to be talking about is Trump slashing drug prices. And with me, I have the guest. My guest with me is one of the co-founders of Food Not Bombs, also an activist, organizer, and advocate, Mr. Keith McHenry. Good to have you back. Nice to see you.
Jay, it's great seeing you. You're doing good. Welcome. It's so exciting to see your good health. That's beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you so very much. Actually, it officially was a month since my surgery yesterday. So
yeah, beautiful.
It's going.
Excellent.
Yeah, definitely. So how have you been, by the way?
Well, I've been kind of suffering from, I live near the world's largest lithium battery fire. And so my tongue has been on fire since January. I even went to Mexico for a while to see if I got out of this air that it would help, but it just was burning the whole time I was in Mexico. And the medical societies, doctors and stuff, they have no real idea. I'm doing all kinds of alternative things to try to deal with it, but it is that's the kind of the real drag. But the main thing I've been working on is the 45th anniversary of Food Not Bombs is coming up on Saturday, May 24th. So we've been doing this. I've been doing Food Not Bombs for 45 years this May. I think I just turned 22 when I started Food Not Bombs. And so it's kind of amazing. And I've been revisiting some of, I'm trying to write like my Substack, Keith McHenry Substack, about that history enough. So there's not like a 1,000-page book, but there's 3,000 word essay basically. And I recall, like, for instance, I went through Iceland one time to speak over in Europe, and the people there were showing me how the Food Not Bombs meal inspired the uprising that overthrew that government and put 36 bankers in prison. And the local media was like, what do you think about that? That's can you be so proud that you overthrew a government? I was like, wow, I kind of followed it a little bit online when it was happening, but boy, actually meet the people and see where the marches left from and who instigated the marches and which young Food Not Bombs kid like replaced the Icelandic flag off the Parliament building and put their equivalent of the 7-Eleven flag and up instead. And so it's really, and right now also I'm following the Myanmar kids who are, there's huge earthquake. And there's both Thai Food Not Bombs and Myanmar Food Not Bombs are doing the relief effort in that area. That is just amazing. And so following what Food Not Bombs is doing around the world is always incredible. And the amount of new chapters, like this week, 6 new chapters, people wanting to have started Food Not Bombs in their town. And that all over in small cities in the U.S., which I'd never even heard of, and I've been all over the United States, and
wow,
it's a mind blower. So Espanola and Food Not Bombs in New Mexico, one of the poorest towns in the country, and we got a new Food Not Bombs chapter happening there. So pretty impressive.
Wow. Yeah, it is a massive success. In fact, on RBN on Sunday, I actually had 2 representatives from the Fort Lauderdale Food Not Bombs. They were here.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah. I had them on to talk about the efforts that they're doing out in Fort Lauderdale as well. And they're doing not only just food sharing, but they're also helping out political prisoners that people are serving time. They're doing bail funds. They're trying to fight against the genocide in Gaza. All these different things going up against Elbit systems, all in Fort Lauderdale. So, I mean, they're doing amazing work down there, just a couple of hours south of me.
Yep. Yeah, they're incredible. They won one of the most decisive federal lawsuits in Food Not Bombs history. And the appellate court wrote, like the judge, Jordan, wrote, his reasoning for why they ruled that it was legal and constitutional for us to do what we're doing. And it was like poetry. It was incredible. We could almost, if it wasn't like 30 pages, we could use it as a Food Not Bombs flyer. It was so impressive. So yeah, for those, they've done some really, really great work. Right before I got arrested in Orlando, in fact, I left with the Fort Lauderdale kids to go to Orlando when we lost an appellate case up there. And that's how we ended up having 24 of us arrested at Lake Eola Park. And then there's a song about it by David Rovics on the arrest of Lake Eola Park and stuff. So yeah, there's like a lot of connections in Food Not Bombs all up and down the state of Florida for sure. Tallahassee, we have like they've been really active in a ton of stuff, and I get calls every day, which goes into the subject that you're introducing here about lower drug prices, because I get sometimes 20 calls in a day from seniors all across the United States who think that I'm going to deliver them food to their house. And at the first month or two, which is about 3 years ago, I would try to see if we could find a Food Not Bombs that could get to their house, but it was generally speaking like 3-hour drive from the local Food Not Bombs, because they were in rural America and far away from where we share the meals. So the stories I would hear of people cutting their, one story where this man, his name was James, he's living in in Texas along the Rio Grande, and all the pantries had run out of food in all of his neighboring counties, so he had no food. He was about to lose his power because he couldn't pay for electricity, and it was the middle of the summer. It was like 110 there, and he was having to half his wife's medication for diabetes, and he was not using his own cancer medicine anymore because he had they couldn't afford the copay for the medicine. And so I hear those stories, people eating cat food, woman that was eating cat food outside of, in North Carolina, people that are, a woman who just stopped being homeless and got into housing, but she had no money for gas, and she was like 30 miles from the nearest gas station or grocery store, and, things like that. So that's America. So like under the Biden administration, homelessness increased by 32%. And can imagine what's going to happen now under the new administration. That is going to be way out of control. And our governor out here, Gavin Newsom, who once was a Republican, who is now a Democrat, shows you what chameleons these people can be. He is calling on a major clampdown on the homeless and saying that he's going to withhold money from counties if they allow any encampments on their streets. And he's actually claiming that basically there was this proposition we had called Proposition 1, which was a bond, a measure to fund mental health facilities, but they're really basically his suggestion, and what it looks like they're going to do is we've got like these homeless courts, and then they put you in a mental health facility and you don't really have rights. And many of my friends ultimately become wards of the state, where they're basically their money is actually controlled by somebody in the county, and they have no real say over it, and they have no say where they're going to live, or they lose their autonomy completely. And that's supposed to be the big solution, is to put people in mental facilities. That's Newsom's current big idea. It's kind of outrageous, because when he was mayor of San Francisco, he was going to end homelessness in San Francisco in 10 years. And that's got to be about 25 years ago. And now it's just the same story. And he's now trying to divert attention from the fact that $24 billion in funding for homelessness had no impact on ending homelessness in the state of California. I mean, that $24 billion is from the 2019 till a year ago. And it turned out that, no surprise, a lot of it was just diverted. They would claim they're going to build affordable housing. They would build like these, glass towers, apartment complexes. And then some reason they no longer were affordable housing by the time they were completed. And in the case of the mayor of San Diego, he was giving all his contracts to his largest campaign supporter. And then his largest campaign supporter ended up putting the profits from Newsom's homeless money that went through, Todd Gloria's office, or his housing authority office in San Diego, into his friend's pocket, and then into a Cayman Island bank account. So, we got the worst home, there's so many people living outside in California, and the people that I've sharing food with in Santa Cruz, they were the worst. Basically, they grew up here, they went to elementary school here, but because they were working class, they got priced out. Their families got priced out of housing, and because housing's so expensive everywhere, it didn't even make sense for them to. Some people moved to Fresno and things like that, trying to find an inexpensive place to live. But even in Fresno, it's very, very expensive, and they've got really rough anti-homeless laws in that community. So it's actually, if Trump actually does do something with the cutting the prices of medicines, and this is a real thing, which of course for Trump it's impossible to ever know if anything's real, that's going to really help a lot of seniors. A lot of these people that are calling me are going to have relief. But we have to see. I mean, like some people pointed out, the lobbyists eventually will be in there trying to get him to reverse his point of view. And, so let's hope it sticks, hope that any kind of, with all these wars, you have to hope, that really is there going to be a ceasefire in Gaza? Is there really going to be an end of the war against against Russia? Is the U.S. going to stop meddling in French West Africa and let them flourish in their communities? He kind of talks a big game, but who knows what the reality is. That's why I think we learned that AID, all the programs of AID, which he claimed he defunded through Doge and all that, turned out that they're all back, and you knew they were useful for imperialist America to manipulate events. So I had my doubts that they were really no longer going to happen because they're an important tool in regime change wars like in Syria, or they're spending all this money currently right now on trying to topple the Georgian government. So, of course, why would you? I find it also interesting, there's all these indivisible protests, and you want to be protesting Trump as much as possible, but then you get out there, and indivisible. For instance, the mayor of our town, Santa Cruz, is one of the leaders of local Indivisible, and he is sweeping the homeless, and he's a rabid Zionist. He blocked an attempt to divest from Israel when it came, before the city council, and people that are at the very core of the war in Gaza are also in our town, are also big proponents of these anti-Trump protests. And they've always got the Ukrainian banner out there, and they got the hands off, NATO. I mean, why would we be against, why would we want to save NATO after what we saw in Libya or Afghanistan or Iraq or Yugoslavia or Kosovo, and, all the horrors that NATO has brought to us, yet these protesters are going out there wanting to defend those type of atrocities. And I wrote a Substack on this because what I found out was that one of the foundations is Open Society Foundation, and they've been providing millions of dollars to Indivisible at the same time that the Open Society was providing billions of dollars to NGOs in an attempt to overthrow the Ukrainian government, or to keep that happening. He was, that foundation funded a lot of the NGOs that led up to the 2014 coup. He's currently funding, George Soros and Open Society are currently funding the NGOs that are attempting to overthrow the Georgian government, and he brags about financing the NGOs that participated in the first coup in Georgia. So these are, it's a shame that we have basically warmongers protesting Trump. And what I pointed out, because we did an action on the 30th in solidarity, with West Africa and the attempt by the U.S. to go after the leadership there, and it was at the same time as our vigil was at the same time as Indivisible's. And I was like, what? You should be protesting, Trump is bombing Yemen right now. You could protest Trump's war against Yemen, or Trump's support of the genocide, or all the other things that are horrific that Trump is doing. But because you're on the same team, the pro-war team, you're ignoring all of that, and so it's a shame, because and I call my article "Controlled Opposition" because that's really what it is. They're filling the space of what millions of Americans who are completely fed up with how the system is going, and then the big protests are these Democratic Party protests, where they're or the AOC Bernie tour, right? And they're basically just trying to. The solution will be like when Indivisible first happened, they urged all their followers to vote for Hillary Clinton for president. That was the solution of their campaign. And you're just thinking, wow, remember that famous video, I think with on 60 Minutes, where she's laughing about killing Gaddafi, right? And that's who we really want to have. Somebody that is, there's so much hope for Africa, and they assassinate the person bringing so much hope to the continent. It's really outrageous. So it's time for us to build our own independent movement against fascism, and I don't know if we can hijack the Indivisible protests and just take them over with our message. One idea, or likely indivisible and 50-51 will just dry up when people realize it's all about voting for somebody at the midterms. That happened last few times indivisible mobilized. People realized it was just Democratic Party rallies, and so it's really interesting. So, but this is a time where we should, and I'm hoping the May 24th, 2025 concerts that we're doing one here in Santa Cruz called Substack. We have 6 bands playing, and I'm going to try to encourage people to build like a anti-war movement, and that's outside and an anti Trump movement that's outside the control of the Democratic Party, because that's really what we need. And I think people will be really disappointed when they find out that Indivisible is just a front group for, look at, they're even forcing Hodge out from the Parkland massacre, out of the DNC because he wouldn't go on with their strategies. It's like the most undemocratic Democratic Party you could possibly have. Unfortunately, we really need huge change, because otherwise these things are going to go really bad.
Reminds me of a video that recently came out on Democracy at Work. Professor Richard Wolff was talking about the difference between reform and revolution. And really, it should be revolution as a method to reform.
No,
so it's basically, instead of, it's kind of a bit of an example, but instead of, for instance, creating more affordable housing, I'm using my own example. Instead of creating more affordable housing as a reform, is that you revolutionize the housing market and go, housing is for people to live in, not for speculation, not for investments, things like that. So then you make it so that it's only for housing, and then and then you also build public housing so that nobody's homeless. So it's like you did the revolution, and then that caused the reform to happen, instead of just doing just reform. You know what I mean? Because every single time reform happens, it reverts back, right? And so that was something that he was talking about, which I found very interesting. But I want to get into the first segment. So we're going to go into this right now. So, of course, we're going to be talking about Trump slashing drug prices. And I put that as a question, because part of me is wondering, is this BS or is he sincere? And as we go through this, as we comb through the details, you'll be able to judge for yourself. So we're going to go into the first one of Trump slash drug prices. So as far as Donald Trump's concerned, he recently put out a post on Truth Social, and which is basically his platform. And I want to read that really quick, just so that we get just the basis of what he's talking about. And then we can start to discuss it a little bit more. And then we can show the news report on it as well. So here, Donald Trump says, for many years, the world has wondered why prescription drugs and pharmaceuticals in the United States of America were so much higher in price than they were in any other nation, sometimes being 5 to 10 times more expensive than the same drug manufactured in the exact same laboratory or plant by the same company. It was always difficult to explain and very embarrassing because, in fact, there was no correct or rightful answer. The pharmaceutical drug companies would say for years that it was research and development costs, and that all of these costs were and would be for no reason whatsoever borne by the suckers of America alone. Campaign contributions can do wonders, but not with me and not with the Republican Party. He continues and says, we are going to do the right thing, something that the Democrats have fought for many years. Therefore, I am pleased to announce that tomorrow morning, the White House at 9 a.m., which was yesterday, I will be signing one of the most consequential executive orders in our country's history, prescription drug and pharmaceutical prices will be reduced almost immediately by 30 to 80%. They will rise throughout the world in order to equalize and, for the first time in many years, bring fairness to America. I will be instituting a most favored nations policy whereby the United States will pay the same price as the nation that pays the lowest price anywhere in the world. He finishes, says, our country will finally be treated fairly, and our citizens' healthcare costs will be reduced by numbers never even thought of before. Additionally, on top of everything else, the United States will save trillions of dollars. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Make America great again. So he did that yesterday at 12:22 a.m. Just to get your initial thoughts about this particular post from Donald Trump.
Well, you know what he's not saying, and maybe this is actually part of it that he could have or should have said, is that a huge percentage of our drugs come from China. So the tariffs, this tariff relief for whatever it is, 90 days or something, could theoretically bring down the price of drugs imported from China. But is that all real? Because we keep seeing that looks like, for instance, he did this, pause in tariffs with China. He looked like he might have telegraphed that to his friends, and then everybody bought stocks. They went through the roof as a direct result, even though the economy is basically, limping along, not collapsing. So I think, I wonder if it will stick, or is he just going to be something that he's saying, and then we'll find out, like the AID, that it was just not really done. It was just words. It is interesting too. Bernie Sanders was talking about that for years. It was obviously very popular. For his base, it would be hugely popular. He's smart politically in a lot of ways. He is having a lot of pushback from MAGA on a bunch of issues, like the fact that we're supposed to be at peace, and that's why many people voted for him. That he would save the economy. People voted for him for that, and are upset at the tariffs and problems in the economy as a result of his decisions. And of course, also, the Stargate announcement. People were like, no, why don't we have that money come to us rather than build AI surveillance farms all over America? So he will really pull through with that. I don't know if he even has the power. I don't know if he can do an executive order to reduce prices, and I'm sure the drug companies are not going to be too happy about it. And it's a possibility that what would end up happening is maybe the generic drugs will even be cheaper than they are currently, but the ones with patents still will be at whatever price the market rate. Sort of, it could be like the affordable housing scam, just a affordable drug scam now. Hard really to say what's going to go on. And I don't know if I have friends that really like Trump, and they say that he does all this chaos and craziness because he's got like some other 5-dimensional chess plan that he's got going. So that's how he hangs on to a lot of his supporters, this belief that there is some real strategy, but it could be just chaos and random statements, at the time, just to build his base, or keep his base, save his base from leaving him while everything else is going crazy. Yeah. So it's hard to say.
Kind of like when they treat him like he's their god, and it's like the Lord works in mysterious ways.
It's exactly like that. I mean, I have really smart friends that are QAnon people still. I'm like, wow, that is intense, man. And then I also have friends that are really close to RFK Jr. of all things, But of course, I have a lot of friends that were Black Panthers, So I was friends with Carol Hill and Kilu Nyasha. I have a lot, they're a lot closer to those people. But anyway, it's fascinating because the two people surrounding Kennedy now, his deputy Secretary of Health and Human Services, the Peter Thiel guy and PayPal mafia person who connected to Palantir, which is the world's largest surveillance and military operation. And so that's like supposed to be health and human services. So you've got like one CIA connected deputy secretary of health and human services, and then his spokesperson is also a Palantir, CIA connected person who have exactly the opposite ideology, allegedly, of what Kennedy is supposed to represent to what MAGA wanted, which is ending, vaccine schedule or things like that, whatever the trip is that they were like hoping he would be for. And so there's tons of infighting now in MAGA over all kinds of issues, so maybe this drug thing, cutting drug prices, is a way to try to give them hope and have them return to the fold. But it could be, maybe it's a real thing. Maybe he's actually is concerned. He's a weird dude. Maybe he's concerned about it and really wants seniors to have affordable drug prices.
Yeah.
You just don't know.
I mean, in that post from Truth Social, the way Trump was speaking, he started to sound like he was going to the left of the Democratic Party. And it was wild. I'm like, wait a minute. This is Donald Trump saying this? He's talking about drug prices and how, every other country in the world has lower drug prices, and we're the ones who are paying these exorbitant amounts in drug prices, and how they need to be lowered for the working people. And it's like, wait a minute, but aren't you for the big businesses? But yet at the same time, he's saying this, and I'm like, is he pulling our leg, or is he actually being serious? And sometimes Trump can sometimes be a wild card, but I always trust a snake to be a snake, and I always trust a capitalist to be a capitalist. And Trump, I feel like this is something to like make him, I think it's a political move, but at the same time, sometimes politicians will do the right thing for the wrong reasons. And sometimes, even though it's for the wrong reasons, I'm like, okay, go ahead and do it,
Yep, exactly. But then I think if we start to read these proclamations that he makes on Truth Social and things, he's always got these wiggle room. It's like it's slightly, the big message sounds great, but then you start to look into the details, and like, for instance, maybe he has no power to do executive order to reduce it, right? So he's safe. He can say something that we would all love, but then it not knowing all along that can't be reality because he didn't really have the power to do it. You look at this other, just a small smidgen of the same thing. So, he claims that the Ansar Allah capitulated, to his demands, and so he's going to stop bombing Yemen now, right? And but then Yemen just shot down another Predator drone above their, that was hovering above their country. So if he's supposed to be not bombing them, and then they've got like, is he really at a fight with Netanyahu and Israel, or maybe not? There's a lot of evidence that it's a good cop, bad cop thing, right? And for instance, the Brookings Institute, which is a Democrat Party affiliated think tank, they put out white paper, Road to Persia, in 2009, which outlined that the president at some point and the U.S. government would pretend like they were really negotiating a nuclear deal with Iran, and it's going to be really good. But then meanwhile, they're going to keep arming Israel, and they're going to facilitate Israel attacking Iran, because that, is the final neocon, victory is supposed to be taking over Iran. And then the U.S. will go, oh, it's terrible what happened to Israel. We're all going to have to defend them and join in the war against Iran, which would be completely insane. If you, particularly if you don't want your economy to crash, that's insanity. But it could be, because then Project 2025 by the Heritage Foundation, which is supposed to be a Republican-associated think tank, the people that gave us Obamacare, for example, or welfare to work under Clinton. They're bipartisan, even if the Democrats try to pretend like they're not. That Heritage is only a right-wing organization, and they are outlining exactly the same thing, that the Trump administration would pretend like they're doing a deal with Iran, and then there'll be some kind of false flag or some incident that would bring Israel and Iran into armed conflict, and the U.S. would be reluctantly dragged into defending Israel. And that they actually outline there's going to be a phony fight between the U.S. and Israel, and then in the end it'll be revealed. So is he going to follow the think tank's advice exactly? Is he going to buck these think tanks, or because he's surrounded with these basically and this friend of mine that's connected that's friends with RFK Jr. There's like noting that there's a lot of CIA in the Trump administration. You basically with J.D. Vance and Peter Thiel, Elon Musk, and then sometimes they try to say Eric Schmidt was like a Democrat, but he's connected. Look at the top aide to the mayor of San Francisco, Sam Altman, was at the first press conference of Trump's announcing this whole Stargate AI farms and making it so that they could have AI, even according to both Sam Altman and Larry Ellison, who was also at the press conference, that they could actually have the AI analyze the cell makeup of individuals. They could create their own individual vaccine for every person, and they would know about every person. Larry Ellison, who's the head of the CIA defense contractor Oracle, which has control of TikTok, for example. He was saying in September before the election that everyone will be in their best behavior because we will know everything about everyone at all times. And he described in quite detail, that it will go to a central location, the AI will figure out what crime you're doing, and then the police will be sent directly to you to pull you in. And that the police will even have to be in their best behavior because everything they do would be going to these AI farms to be analyzed, and then appropriate, people in the local government will come out and capture you or whatever it is that they're supposed to do. So this digital dystopian thing that the Trump administration is putting forth was actually core to many of the objections of the MAGA people, and now they're getting it full on. So you look at all these Palantir and people surrounding the Trump administration, and the bragging of Alex Karp, who's the CEO of Palantir, who's like really a nut. They've been worried that the Palestinian movement will be the end to freedom in the world, and they'll never ever get people to go out and fight their wars anymore. At the same time, they're saying, both Peter Thiel and Alex Karp were saying that they're the most powerful company in the world, and then they can, and they're getting contracts. I think they're getting the contracts for like Social Security. They're definitely, that's why I think in the Health and Human Services, you got Palantir people at the very center, because, they've already swiped all the data, right? Digitized it. And then they're going to be selling us solutions, that might not be solutions, they'll just be profit. So when you have Palantir, when you have the CIA overtly running the White House without even trying to pretend like there's not, who knows what's going to go on? It's pretty frightening.
True. I wanted to share this as well. This is actually a segment from Fox News, and they asked a couple questions that I'm actually quite interested in hearing about. So let's get into this, and then we'll talk about it on the other side.
And we're back with a Fox News alert. President Trump just announcing on Truth Social that prescription drug and pharmaceutical prices will be reduced by 30 to 80% almost immediately. This appears to be the major announcement that the president has been teasing for days. He plans to sign an executive order tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. So that's news ahead of all the other news that we've already been talking about for tomorrow. Monday is going to be a busy day. The president's saying on Truth, Molly, I will be instituting a most favored nation policy whereby the United States will pay the same price as the nation that pays the lowest price anywhere in the world. It's an interesting move for the White House.
It is. And that is kind of about trade. At the same time, he's also been talking about expanding the ability to make drugs here, making that easier for companies to be able to do that, and companies to build, and drug companies to build, and factories to build, and to bring some of that home as well. And then also, not to forget, we're expecting some sort of announcement related to China. I don't know if that all gets woven into this or not, Lydia, but your thoughts?
I was thinking the same thing, because a lot of our active ingredients for our pharmaceutical drugs come from places like China and from India as well. So I was wondering, I had the same thought. I wonder if some of this China deal is also addressing where our pharmaceutical ingredients are coming from and having to do something to do with, reshoring or giving us better access and more transparent access to those critically needed ingredients. I also have another thought, too, is I wonder if he's addressing the pharmacy benefit managers. We've heard a lot about them in the news, but those are kind of like the intermediary players that broker access to drugs between hospitals and pharmacies from the drug makers. There have been a lot of questions about their role and how pricing is set for access for Americans. Maybe he's addressing that. That's been a big issue as well. So we'll have to wait and see till tomorrow.
So just like you were saying earlier, like a lot of the main components that are in some of these medications are sourced from places like China and India, and so it feels like Trump is trying to save face because he had this tariff war, and he realized that this tariff war that he's trying to wage, especially with companies like China, is really going to blow up in his face, especially since we have a huge block of people that are Trump voters who are on these same medications. And if their cost of their medication skyrockets because of the tariffs, then they're going to blame him because it all happens under him. And I have made a prediction that between October of this year and January of next year, about 30% of Trump voters are going to hate Donald Trump's guts because of the damage that he's doing to his base. And this feels like he's trying to mitigate that damage that he caused, right? But my question is that he's going to have to mitigate that damage while at the same time, if he's actually serious about this, he's going to have to undercut his billionaire buddies at the same time. And is he really willing to do that? Or is he just put it out there in the ether so that people will believe that he's going to do it when in reality, he's not? And so that's one of my biggest questions is is he really doing this? Or is it just optics? Because I know that the Democratic Party they're like the royalty when it comes to optics. Like they love optics, but the Republican Party is now starting to do a lot of optics too.
Yeah, I think the key word that he had in his statement was almost immediately, right?
Almost immediately.
Just like end the war with Ukraine in 24 hours, right? There's always these little hints that it might not happen, because almost immediately might be 20 years from now. It's very interesting. So
deniability, right?
Yeah, I think that's what it is. And he always has these subtle little caveats in his announcements. So, for instance, he back to National Endowment for Democracy. it didn't make any sense that somebody that's trying to, that they would defund that and shut it down. And because it's a core part of U.S. imperialism. And it turned out it really wasn't, right? And all these things are kind of like, so the announcement of when it is, so you get the big story that they're going to cut drug prices. By the time they aren't cut, no one will know the difference because, you will have thought you've heard this announcement. Reality, you won't know. And you might go, well, maybe my drug was the one that wasn't cut, right? But you won't know. And that really, in the end, all the drugs were not cut. It's a very, very fascinating. But yeah, in this issue with China, I think that it's totally I think you're right. The idea that the tariffs would have made, all the prescription drugs potentially go up like, double in price or greater. And people already can't afford their drugs. And so, and that is his base. And and so it would really damage him. Now, I think he's going to lose. I think your prediction may be that the MAGA people are going to hate him even sooner than you're predicting. Because if you watch like on, I've been trying to build there's really, really good people that voted for Trump, and they weren't racist. None of the people I know that supported Trump, they fell for the lies of Trump, and they thought really all these great things were going to happen. And just like the people, there's really good people that voted for Kamala, who thought maybe if she got in, she would maybe do something good. You don't know. But both parties end up ultimately are just deceiving you, and they're essentially have the same masters, the same people funding them. So that's the problem.
Yeah, I because a lot of times liberals will bring this up. They'll say, well, the people who voted for Trump are not racist, but racism is not a red line for them. And that's when I push back and I go, yeah, and a lot of people who voted for Kamala Harris, they're not genocidal, but genocide wasn't a red line for them.
Correct.
It just goes to show that both sides they've been placated, they've been hoodwinked, they've been bamboozled because they felt like they had to give some concessions in order for them to be able to get a personal win, within, domestic policy, when in reality, there was never an intended to be a win for any one of us. It's all for the people at the top. And so, a lot of people are constantly being fooled by both these parties and really by the system itself in order to give a thumbs up or have their consent manufactured in order to allow atrocities to continue. Because at least we're eating, right? At least we have cheaper drugs, or at least my rent's not going up as high as it usually would. But in reality, it's still going to happen. It's just they're lying to you and saying that it won't. Right. It's really as they say, it's nasty work on the part of both parties. Really.
And well, my grandfather was OSS, Office of Strategic Services. He was Harvard Law, Dartmouth, all the classic things of like George Bush. He basically was parallel with George Bush Senior, George H.W. Bush, and he explained to me, because I think he thought I would be following in his footsteps, so to speak. He explained how they set up. He was involved in Pearl Harbor, and why we needed Pearl Harbor, because American people wouldn't go to war against Japan unless we did that. But another thing that he made really clear was that the only purpose of elections is to divide the population so they are not a threat to the people in power. That's the only reason. So when I heard him argue with Secretary of Defense Robert McNamara over the phone, or with his best friend Curtis LeMay, he was arguing for them to drop the atomic bomb on Hanoi, not to defend democracy. he was very clear with both of them that defend capitalism. And of course, that's why the Nazis at the end of World War II were allies of the United States, because the issue was not, Nazism or they wanted to push back against communism for fear of the good example. Well, that's what the whole, overthrowing, Cuba is about. You don't want people having, what potentially could happen in Cuba, where everybody's housed and everybody's fed and that kind of thing. You've got to paint them as monsters. And so the people in power, at least during the period, he died when I was 14, they were clear that it was not, that democracy was a symbol to manipulate the public. The intelligence community, which now we have overtly in control of the White House, they're the ones that determine who's in power, who isn't. And they don't do it by like a magic wand or like the Wizard of Oz or something. They do it by manipulating events. That's why the Epstein thing is so important. Or any of these other like blackmail things that go on. And it's not just sex blackmail, but financial blackmail and so on. Things to keep everybody going along with the that's why you'll see Epstein with Hillary and and Bill and Trump and Melania, and they're all on the same team because they're on the oligarch team, right? And so that and you can see there's even connections between our enemies, where the U.S. billionaires are doing business, like in Russia still, even though it's not supposed to, things like that, right? So it's really the it's a divide and conquer strategy, and that's the other thing, having dual. The people in power like to have there be the Republicans and the Democrats, or Coke and Pepsi, or McDonald's and Burger King. So it makes it like good or evil. That having a dualist way of organizing society is a core to the ruling class maintaining power, and that's why they have they have these elections, not because they support democracy. They absolutely are against democracy. That would be a threat to their survival, because there's 99, like in Occupy, there's 99% of us who are getting screwed, and that 1% needs to maintain power, and that's one of the key ways of maintaining power is running phony elections.
Yeah, definitely. Well said. One of the things I want to give attention to is there was someone who was very skeptical about this move by Trump, and they actually did I don't want to say a tweet thread, but they did a long tweet basically explaining why they think that Trump is full of it. So I want to share this as well, because I want to get this side of the conversation. This is from Brian Berletic. So he says this. He says, "This is one of the most insulting statements so far from the Trump administration to the U.S. public, pretending to stand up to Big Pharma while lying to protect them." He says, 1, the pharmaceutical corporations overcharging for medications are mainly U.S. companies in the first place. I want to stop there, because a lot of times we'll talk about how, a lot of these companies, they get a lot of their main components sourced from places like China or India. But these are still American companies that are screwing over American people. And so to say that, making it sound like these companies are from outside the country, no, these companies are inside the country. And they are really willing to just throw their own people under the bus in order to make a quick buck. And so I found that to be a really strong point there.
Brian is someone everyone should follow. From my background, from having grown up with not only with my grandfather and all the education and intelligence that I received from 14 years of, really like maybe 12 years since I was a little kid, of studying under him, And then my direct experience of being the target of the FBI and CIA and stuff for another 50, 60 years. I found he has got the best analysis of really how the game is played, how it's organized. And so he's one of the people that have been pointing out this Heritage Foundation, Project 2025, and Trump pretending like they're like going to do a deal with Iran, and the Brookings Institute, Pathway to Persia, in 2009. He's been talking about those two publications and their connection to the actual what is happening right now. And so the U.S. pharmaceutical industry are the ones making all this money and gouging everybody, and also withholding, withholding services, the insurance companies. I mean, we're supposed to have Obamacare, and it's still like as frustrating as can be to get health care in America. That was supposed to be like, this panacea. But of course, that was a Heritage Foundation. That was, when Mitt Romney was governor of Massachusetts, that's when they brought in the mass care at that time. And that turned out not to be so good. My brother died in Massachusetts, and I was trying to deal with his death afterwards, and I found that Romney Care was a huge nightmare, because we had to sell what little property he had to pay back his debt from having received mass care. So we were hoping to sell his van so we could pay for the cremation.
Yeah.
But it turned out I went through all this paperwork, and I had to give the van to the state of Massachusetts because he was on mass care. So we had to raise money for the cremation other ways, And, I think that, I would agree with Brian that the Trump administration could order the companies in the U.S. to lower drug prices. They could also maybe tell them to get their chemicals from U.S. Companies somehow. But see, that's the whole thing that's fascinating. There was this idea of all these tariffs and that would bring manufacturing back to the U.S. and blah blah blah. But you actually have to build buildings and train workers, and you have to rebuild steel mills and all these things, and that would take decades. Maybe you could do it in 10 years. I guess they're trying to do the Stargate thing in 5 years, but that's no benefit to the American people to have mass AI surveillance. And I just saw in the bill that they're proposing now, I guess in Congress, that they're trying to ban states from regulating AI. And you saw Jaybefaunt speak at an AI conference in Europe a few months ago, where his main message was there can be no regulation of AI. And I think that will be like a huge problem going forward. Already AI is crazy now, the disruption in your life that's and it doesn't benefit regular people. Never will. It's just going to benefit the military and surveillance, and it's quite frightening. But yeah, people should follow Brian, because I think he's got really solid perspective. He's a former military person who saw up close and personal how corrupt the whole thing is. It's quite fascinating.
Yeah, definitely. So let's continue on, because he goes on. He says, number 2, the reason Big Pharma has to sell cheaper elsewhere is because if they don't, other countries like Thailand or India will literally make medicine themselves, even if the U.S. says this is illegal, and then won't pay Big Pharma anything at all. So this is hilarious. It's like, all right, well, if you guys don't want to lower the prices, then I guess we're going to have to make it ourselves.
Yeah.
I'm not mad at that.
No.
You know, if you guys really want to sell within, you know, our borders, then you got to make it affordable for everybody.
Yep.
If not, then we got the people, right? Thailand got the people. India definitely got the people.
Yeah.
So you know they can make a big infrastructure project and then build these things and then have them manufacture it themselves.
Exactly. As long as Clinton doesn't bomb your pharmaceutical factory in Sudan.
Wow. True. Yeah.
But anyway, yeah. No, I mean, and I think a lot of the world is starting to see that. Just do your business. Like China doesn't really need to worry about the tariffs with the U.S. There's a whole world for China to do business with, right? You know, it's you know, yeah, just screw the U.S. I mean, we could really end up just totally screwing ourselves through this, you know, like this whole idea that we're the big bully and therefore, you know, do what we say, and then people go, well, what? You know, we don't need to work with you. We could just work with ourselves.
Yeah, it's like who is the U.S. who is Big Pharma to dictate to us like what they pay? Like it's the United States of America. We're supposed to be the big dogs on the world stage, and yet we can't bring the pharmaceutical companies to heel.
Yeah, I know. Or we can't make the health insurance companies cover everybody, or we can't have universal health care. You know, like everywhere. I mean, part of the way they get away with some of this stuff is people don't travel as much. But I used to have fibromyalgia, and it was a big problem. And I was in Belfast, and at about like 3 p.m, the people I was hanging with, I was like, oh my God, I'm going to run out of my pain medicine. You know, so I need to, you know, is there any way I could see a doctor in Belfast? He goes, oh, just a second. They call up the doctor. Yeah, come in at 9. I show up at 9. I mean, here it would take me like 6 weeks to see a doctor in Santa Cruz. And, but I go in at 9 o'clock in the morning, and the guy goes, oh, we don't have a contract with the U.S., so you're going to have to pay $20. Oh my God, even my copay in Santa Cruz after waiting 6 weeks for an appointment was greater than that. And then he said, okay, and I had a ferry to catch over to Scotland. And they say, oh, here, we'll just call it over to the, this is a controlled substance. And they say, oh, yeah, we'll go over to the chemist and they'll have it ready for you in 20 minutes. So I go over there. Oh, we're so sorry, Mr. McHenry, you have to pay $20, which I was paying at that time $138 for the same exact thing in the U.S. And that's been my experience traveling around the world. You can get access to much, like all my dental work I do in Mexico, I would never bother the U.S. because it's half price and much higher quality. They have much more modern equipment in Mexico. So, you know, you get much better service and it's much less expensive. And it saves you all this money, even if you travel to, you know, a few weeks ago, we went to Cancun for Playa del Carmen for dental work, and including the hotel, the $400 round trip airfare for 2 to Cancun, and the dental work, it saved us like thousands of dollars. And we got to hang out on the beach. That was insane. So that's American medical. I mean, I've met people that went to India to have surgery because it was like higher quality and much less costly. But then you can have weird things like there's medicine. This time release morphine I was using during fibromyalgia. I was living in Istanbul, and my friend said, "Oh, you can get anything you want here." Turned out that the U.S. pharmaceutical companies wouldn't allow Turkey to have access to the time release morphine. It turned out, you know, I found that out at an unfortunate period of time where I ran out, and I was like in massive pain for a long time. Boy, thank God I got over fibromyalgia. And I did that through a really simple technique for anybody out there that's had fibromyalgia, but it's not cheap in a way. I had a gift. Somebody paid for me to go to this place for a water-only fast, and it's good to have medical supervision during a water-only fast. But within 28 days, I no longer had fibromyalgia, something I had struggled with for 20 years. And I've never had symptoms ever since. Isn't that incredible? And had I could have saved 20 years. See, in the U.S. medical system, since they know that can work, should have a subsidized, everybody that has fibromyalgia should be allowed to go to a medically supervised water-only fasting facility and cure their fibromyalgia. But, if this woman that gifted, she had thousands of dollars in credit at this place, and otherwise I would have, never gone there and never had, she hadn't gifted it to me, I would have never been able to afford to do it. I always feel so horrible for people with fibromyalgia, knowing how that was a nightmarish illness. And I survived it. I was homeless a lot of the time. I had fibromyalgia too, which is, that just only adds to and I got banned from employment in the U.S. by the FBI around the time I got diagnosed. So it was horrible, like 20 years of that. But then here you have an actual way, like some alternative medicine works, and like this worked for me, and it should be something that everybody with fibromyalgia can try to see if it does cure them. But everybody has to have all this money. I think it costs $5,000 for, to do a 30-day water-only fast with doctors and stuff to monitor you. And there could be like it seemed like if you're just going to be drinking water. The other thing was I was lucky. I ended up, Food Not Bombs got a donation at the time that meant I didn't have to keep going around giving lectures trying to raise money to keep Food Not Bombs stuff going. So I had to have the stars aligned. I got a large donation, a $20,000 donation. At the same time, I got a gifted, so I was able to take the whole month off without freaking out. And that was a blessing. And it transformed my life. And everybody should have that opportunity. I mean, why should it be left to chance that you get cured from some horrible, debilitating illness? It's incredible. So the whole system is, I think that's where some of the problem is. If you don't ever leave the United States and you're frustrated with this health system, but you don't really know how much better it can be in other parts of the world, and how much less expensive it can be. And it's sad. And then I've been homeless 5 times, and when I had fibromyalgia, when I became homeless again, and then I got hassled by the emergency room to pay $25,000 in fees because I was going there so much. And thankfully, I got one of the bill collector. I said, "Look, I'm homeless. If I had $25,000, I'd rent an apartment." And they said, "Well, we're going to just write off your debt." But that one of the biggest reasons, so many people that I share food with and survival gear on the streets are on the streets because of medical crises. And a lot of people that, we look down on people that are on fentanyl, and that's like such a frightening and deadly drug. And I've lost a lot of friends to fentanyl, a lot. But what ends up happening is that you'll get you'll be so many of my friends were injured building Santa Cruz. I have friends that fell off of buildings while trying to install windows. And I had a friend that his back was broken when he was building our highway in town, and so on. And these people all live outside now. And some, like when they got cut off of their pain meds, they started moving into street meds, and they already have become homeless. And I run into that so often. And then trying to get up, kick. Back when we had heroin, we don't have that hardly anymore because of the Afghan war's over. But now it's all fentanyl, and There's another whole thing that's horrible is that really one of the things my grandfather, I was on Savvy about this actually because of tweet about this. Like one of the things my grandfather did in Burma when he organized the most deadly bombing campaign in world history, which is Operation Meeting House firebombing Tokyo. He was very proud of that. But the other thing he was very proud of is that he exported heroin from Burma into the black community, and he set up a distribution network so that after the end of World War II, they would have the black community busy fighting over each other over heroin rather than uniting against the fact that the GI Bill was two-tiered, that to get the Dixiecrats to vote for a GI Bill, they had to have it be more advantageous for white people than black people. And they knew since black and white people are dying together in this brutal war, that they would assume they'd have the same rights when they came back to the United States. And when they would discover that they did not have the same rights, they did not basically have the same access to buying housing, which was the key point of the problem at the beginning of the GI Bill, being two-tiered. We need to flood the black community with heroin, so they all are busy doing that and not busy uniting to have equal, to have the GI Bill be equal for both whites and blacks. So when Gary Webb he wrote the Dark Alliance story about, which included the CIA working with the Crips and the Bloods and really expanding them and creating crack cocaine and doing that. We saw during the crack cocaine crisis in San Francisco, we were serving food at Golden Gate Park. You would see plainclothes cops selling crack at the corner, and then they'd be arresting hippies selling pot, because they needed crack to be in the neighborhood, because they needed crime, because they needed more police money. And so, the largest fentanyl bust in California was from the employee at the San Jose Police Union, and she was shipping fentanyl all over the United States using their return address and their FedEx and UPS account to ship fentanyl all over the country. And yet, it becomes these horrible, people from Mexico are bringing it in, or the Chinese are blah, 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 blah. Well, she was ordering the stuff and having it shipped to the union headquarters, and then she was repackaging it and mailing it to her customers all across America. And so the whole the manipulation by the security state behind the scenes is incredible. So it would not be unlikely that Trump says these things, and the people actually running his administration know full well none of them will ever happen. And and if something positive does happen, it's probably because of a strategy to buy a population off, or not because they actually care about the American people, obviously. So yeah, I would be very skeptical if there's any reality to lowering prescription drug prices, unfortunately.
Definitely. Let's continue on. He says, number 3, even at 30 to 80% cheaper, Big Pharma is still vastly price gouging patients who often need this medication to just live. The Trump administration repeats the big lie that Big Pharma spends a lot on research and development, ignoring the fact that much of it is actually paid by the U.S. government and charity. And this part goes into how a lot of the research and development is done by our public universities, which is paid for through our federal dollars. And so therefore, we're actually literally paying for these medications twice.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. We're funding all this research, and and then we're having to pay extra prices on top of it. It's incredible. I mean, we're just being duped.
Yeah. Absolutely. And then we have the 4th, where he goes into, He says, I guess they bet Americans don't know any of this, and this childish explanation will easily dupe them. They're probably right. And this is unfortunate because, honestly, when I look at a lot of people praising this, it's like, well, I mean, it's like somebody had said this earlier in the chat, and I want to make sure I get to this because I think this is a really good point. Jacqueline says this sounds like it could be a bit of a scam where they'll overprice medicine by 2,000% and then bring the price down to only 1,000% overpriced.
I can relate to that because I had a graphic design company and would in Boston, and I would have customers come in to. There's this thing called the coupon book, university coupon book that I published, designed, and that's what we did. We would raise all the prices and then give you like 25% off. So we raise all the prices 50% and then give you 25% off, and then I did that, year after year. That was just a common practice. So it's totally what she's saying is very likely. Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. And then the last point, he brings this up. He says, if you want to know more about Big Pharma, the real solution, nationalization of pharma, watch this video I did on Thailand's government pharmaceutical organization, GPO. And so he puts a link to his video where he talks about how Thailand was able to basically nationalize their pharmaceutical industry, which I will put in the chat. But Brian Berletic actually talks about this, and this is why I'm such a big proponent of fully nationalizing the healthcare industry. Because the thing is, like, ultimately, like, even if you have a single payer healthcare system, who's to say that the pharmaceuticals, the hospitals, medical device manufacturers, the nursing homes, the physical therapy institutions, who's to say that they still won't price gouge us, but they'll do it through the government instead?
Exactly.
Right?
Yep.
And so my thing is like, look, we have to get all profits out of healthcare, period. No profits in hospitals, no profits in clinics, no profits in pharmaceuticals, no profits. You should not be able to profit off of making a wheelchair or a power chair. I honestly don't think so. You should not be able to profit off of making an MRI machine.
Right.
You should not have to profit off of making syringes. I'm being real with you. Because the thing is, like, the moment you start to introduce profit into a healthcare system, somebody is going to die because they cannot afford it.
Exactly. Yeah. No, it would. Yeah, I mean, like, back to homelessness. Huge percentage of homeless people are there because of our healthcare system. So you want to, Newsom wants to end homelessness in California. One of the things he could do is, so-called nationalize healthcare in California. But, it's absolutely, it's and the countries that like Thailand that have nationalized important aspects of, because I've heard him talk about that a lot, Brian. And if you didn't want to use all the local services and that were super cheap and everything, you could, go to another country or go to a private doctor. But every single person in Thailand has equal access to, affordable healthcare that they don't have to worry about. So yeah. There are all these solutions, but the problem is the people in power want to keep getting profit, and that to them is more important. And they certainly don't care. They don't care about life. Look at the genocide. They can allow a live stream genocide, and they can't. No one can stop it. That's a message that they're trying to send to the world that we are beyond the pale. We can do anything we want. You can't stop us, so you're going to have to obey. And, it's like basically a global mafia. It's incredible. So, yeah, they could nationalize you know, pharmaceutical industry. And well, I just saw like there was an interesting news report about this CEO in China got caught doing fraud. So they convicted him of, gave him the death penalty. You know, you don't have that over in the United States. We keep rewarding people for all this stuff. You know, it's incredible.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I'm not for capital punishment, but at the same time, it's like if you're going to be exploiting people and then ruining people's lives, chickens come home to roost.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm not into executing, but look at I find it really interesting, the Luigi story, you know, so whether Luigi did it or who did it or what went on, you know, you can speculate a lot about the reality of that entire, you know, shooting. But the fact that on Ben Shapiro's followers denounced him for being against Luigi, it just shows America is, you know, they might not know what the solution is. They might not realize that it's a lot better in other places like Thailand, but they certainly know it's bad. And both MAGA and you know, blue and red MAGA are totally, you know, want the health system changed, and but corporations are in the way, you know, profits in the way. Yeah,
absolutely. And so that's it for this segment. I'm telling you right now, you know, and to the audience, what do you think? Do you think that Trump is just blowing smoke, or is he actually serious? I'll come to the conclusion where I'll see it. I'll believe it when I see it, because to be honest with you, as somebody that just had a transplant a month ago, I'm looking at the price for the medications I had to pay for, and I'm just like, okay, yeah, right, okay, Donnie, let's see what you got. But
yeah,
I don't believe him at all. You know, I don't believe him. I don't believe him. I don't believe Biden. As far as I can throw them. So,
no.
You know, it's like, yeah, you're not really going to fight against the system. You're just trying to, if anything, at the very most, he's trying to, you know, release some pressure, you know, so that it doesn't build up so much against him and it blows up in his face.
Yeah, that's what it is. Just a bunch of subtle manipulations of throw out statements that, like recognizing Palestine. You know, that was one of them. Then you start to look into a little bit of that, and then of course his administration said, no, we never really said that. But then that was, you know, he might have to say that to get the Saudi Arabia to go along with whatever scam he's trying to push with Saudi Arabia, right? You know, that was, they say, we won't work with you unless you say you recognize Palestinian, you know, Palestine. But recognizing Palestine is like, what does that mean? Palestinian Authority? Or that, oh yeah, there are Palestinians, but we're going to shuttle them all out of Gaza into the Sinai Desert. Well, I recognize them, but I didn't recognize them having rights. You know, Everything is this whole linguistic charade of hoping that you will. But it was all that way through the Biden. You know, look at Biden administration. They gaslit us about the greatest economy ever. And I was just like, oh my God, I just got another Facebook post about how wonderful the economy is while I'm on the phone with the fifth person this morning who has no food. So if the economy is the greatest ever, why am I answering United Health's referrals all day for where to get food? That's insane.
Great point. So with that, if you guys have not already, go ahead and give a like to the stream. Thank you so very much. And so we can go to some of the comments in the chat. Keith, Mr. Keith, are you able to stay for the next segment, or do you have to go?
I should probably go. I've got an event tonight I've got a plan for. So
okay,
it's great. Thank you so much, Jay. That's beautiful. Have me on again.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming on and being able to have this very important conversation. Of course, you also gave a lot of historical analysis that a lot of people really should take into consideration, especially in regards to a lot of decisions that the Trump regime is trying to do as well. So thank you very much for that.
Yeah, thank you. And celebrate the 45th anniversary of Food Not Bombs. Come to our concert if you're in Santa Cruz at the Duck Pond on Saturday, May 24th.
May
Yay!
20th. All right. Awesome. Thank you so much, Mr. Keith.
Thank
Good to
you,
see you.
Dave. We'll see you in a bit. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
See you. Actually, I'll see you almost every day because I just watch you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye.
That's great.
All right. So with that being said, we're going to go into some of the comments in the chat, and then we're going to do a patron shout out, and then we will get into the next subject. So first off, I'm going to check on the Rumble side to see if we have any Rumble rants. So we're going to go there. So don't have a Rumble rant, but I do have a comment on Rumble. So let's go there, and then we'll continue on. All right. So thank you so very much to SJ Tuff. Says, great to see Keith on your show. He's a fountain of information for sure. Absolutely. This is one of the reasons why I had him on. It's because, number one, he's a wealth of information. Number two, he is a very compassionate and genuine person that's also very brilliant. And so I was like, yay, let's have this conversation. Let's bring him on to talk about this news story, this important news story. All right, so let's go into the Twitter chat, and I'm going to say some hellos as well as get some input from the rest of y'all. So we have starting off with CBC Voter coming in saying happy Tuesday at JB. Good to see you, CBC Voter. Roger Meadows says, oh, snap. Santa Claus is back, baby. Yep, giving gifts of wisdom. All right, good to see you in here. Kate Mack says, hey, JB, looking sharp as always. Forehead kisses to you, love. Thank you so very much, Miss Kate Mack. All right, up in here. Terry Connolly says, greetings, JB and comrades. Good to see you too, Terry. All right, Bryce Smith coming in and saying, good afternoon, JB. Bryce, my brother from another mother. All right. Miss Jacqueline says, hey, Jaybefaunt, just watched an old Jaybefaunt episode where you said that twerking is your favorite dance. So do I. Hope that you're going to treat us to a display of your twerking expertise. No. This is a family show. Oh no, why in the world did I say, oh my gosh. The stuff that comes out of my mouth, sometimes I wonder why y'all still watch this program. Why do y'all watch me? How did I get to 5,000 subscribers? I have no idea. Thank you, but I don't know. Anyway, thank you so much for that. Roger Mess says, okay, this is why the CIA fear that you're feeding the homeless. It is a national security threat. Yeah, because the thing is, like, if people are taken care of, then that means that they don't have that disease of despair. That means that they have more bandwidth, which means that they can think about other things besides trying to survive, which means they start to think about how the system actually works and how it works against them. So then they start to talk to each other. Once they start to talk to each other, then they start to do what? Organize. See, that's what humans do. We organize. And then we take matters into our own hands. And this is what they don't want us to do. So they got to start off with the basics. They cut off the basic needs, and then therefore everything else collapses. Thank you very much for that, Roger. Pitchforks are coming says, good day, peeps. Good day, mate. Right. Too right. Jimmy says, hi, y'all. Good to see you, Jimmy. Kate Mack says, Jacqueline, it is deplorable. I'm a member of RBN Boston. Yes, you are. And we used to feed the homeless, but now it's illegal, of course. We find other ways, but it is disgusting. Yeah, and of course, a lot of municipalities across the United States make it illegal to feed people, feed the unhoused. There are ways around it. You just got to look at, different ways, especially if you can find like a business owner that like owns the land that their business is on. And if you can collaborate with them, then if you're feeding somebody on that property, then they can't come after you because it's on your property, right? If you can find somebody with the property to be able to do that, then you can collaborate with them. And then if you know of any small businesses, especially ones that are like worker cooperatives, bring them along, right? Especially for like events and stuff like that, so that they can make a little extra money on the side too. Bring them along too, so that to encourage them. But yeah, thank you so very much for that, Kate Mack. We got to do what we can. Jacqueline says, "Sorry if this sounds like an insensitive question, but if people have to run out of human food, how come they can get a hold of cat food? Because it's much cheaper. Because it's much cheaper. It's about the cost. It's about the cost and the volume that you can get it in. And that's what makes it sad, is that, cat food is just much cheaper. So therefore, some people, they have to survive off of that, and it shouldn't be. But unfortunately, that's just the way it goes. And you're not being insensitive by asking that question. You're just curious. But it is quite sad that we actually have that existing within the United States. Yeah. And yes, Michelle says that's dystopian. It absolutely is. Amy coming in saying, "Good day, all. Good to see you." Michelle says, "Indivisible is a Hillary-derived organization, unfortunately." Luke Carlos, all right, part of the Food Not Bombs chapter in Fort Lauderdale. He was just on RBN on Sunday. Good to see you. Give a shout out to Luke. He says, "Hi, everyone. Good to see you." Amy says, "Why do prices need to rise in other countries?" That's also a really good question. Why do they have to rise? Just pay your CEOs and shareholders less. They can survive. They just need to start eating less avocado toast and stop going to Starbucks. See what I did there? Pitchforks Are Coming says, "Any third party is better than the duopoly. The Green Party is the better third party, and it would be much easier to fight against the fascists from an elected Green Party position." While that is true, I do think that the Green Party does have some things they have to work on, but they're definitely better than the duopoly. So yeah, I would agree with you there. But it's also equally as powerful, if not more powerful, to also build dual power outside of electoral politics too, because then that actually makes it easier for a third party like the Green Party to actually move or make waves. Because if you are building the community up, and then the third party can go, "Look, see what they're doing? This is what I want to do on a larger scale." That gets more people on your side. Luke Carlos says, "The zero method in Trump's madness." Sometimes I wonder if Trump is actually calculated. He just wants you to think that he's not. And sometimes I think that Donald Trump is just a bumbling fool. Either way, he's just a lackey for the supervillains. Anyway, Kate Mack says, "One never knows with Trump because he's such a freaking liar." That's also true. He likes to lie. He likes to lie like a rug on the floor. Bryce Smith says, "Yep, JB, but yeah, he won't do it because it is necessary." Yep. H. Lukil says, "Jay, my insulin costs about 75 euros for 5. In the US, it costs around $400. And this is what we're talking about, right? Because if he only has to pay for 75 euros versus $400 in the United States, there's something wrong here. Something's very wrong. Adingo ate me baby says, "Uncle Keith, good to see you. Adingo ate me baby." Javier says, "I believe it will be earlier. The pain is going to hit during back to school at the end of August." Okay, so you're talking about my prediction that a lot of Trump supporters are going to hate Trump. You could be right. I'm not going to discount that. The reason why I say October is because that is the 9th month after Trump's inauguration. So between 9 and 12 months I give before people start to really hate him. But it could happen earlier, or it could start around that time in the August. It could start around September. But yeah, I mean, you could be right. I'm not going to die on that hill, but I definitely see Donald Trump losing a lot of favor among his base between now and October. Let's just put it that way. But yeah. Luke says, I had a friend from high school who died about 12 years back because she could not afford her insulin. We all have stories. It's horrific. Yeah, unfortunately, there's a lot of people who have to, and sometimes what people will do is because they can't afford it, they'll start to ration it, but not according to the doctor's recommendations. And so then they're giving themselves less than what they should, and then that also harms them. It is deeply important that you take the recommended dose for what you're supposed to have, no matter what condition you have. Because if you're not, then you could still be damaged. Like, for instance, one of the anti-rejection meds I'm on, if I take less than what's recommended, I could still face my organ being rejected. So therefore, it's important that I take that same amount every time and take it at the same time every time. That's the point. But it's very hard to do if you can't afford it. Because then you run out, and then guess what? You can't afford it. And then you end up losing. And here's the thing. When it comes to organ donation, that is one of the biggest gifts a person can ever receive. And so do you really want that gift to be at risk because of price of medicine? Because of drug prices? Are we just going to allow that to be at risk? Over 109,000 Americans per year right now are waiting for organ transplant. Over 109,000. Over 90,000 of them are waiting for kidneys alone. And imagine if 50% of them couldn't afford their medications for their anti-rejection meds. You know how many gifts that is? Either from donors that deceased or living donors that now that kidney or that pancreas or that heart or that lung or that liver is now rejected and it's unusable. See how wicked that is? This is why we should not have profit tied to our pharmaceuticals. Yeah. Human Rights for All says the 99% unite in voting for a third party. Until the 99% unite in voting for a third party, nothing will change for the people. I'd say the 99% each unite in building dual power in addition to voting third party. But yeah, I agree. It has to be a huge contingent, a huge block of people that end up pulling together. Jeanette coming in saying Obamacare equals Romney care. Yes. And that was a Heritage Foundation plan. So when people talk about, oh my God, the Republicans and the Heritage Foundation, you got Barack Obama also using a Heritage Foundation plan. Is he that much different than the Republicans? I'd argue no. Colin says, I appreciate the food, not bombs, but Keith was on Primo Radical with some pretty concerning denialist views. I don't know anything about that. In fact, I haven't watched Primo Radical in quite some time, so I don't know. I mean, you know, he's pretty frequent on Twitter if you want to ask him about it, but yeah, I didn't know anything about that. So, but thank you very much, Colin. Christy says Obamacare was not healthcare, though. It was a wheelbarrow of cash to insurance corporations. Heritage Foundation endorsed it, and Obama signed it into law. Kind of funny how people will fearmonger about Project 2025, and yet you got a Democrat using one of their healthcare policies, right? It's crazy. Sila says, agree, it is sad that most individuals don't understand all this talk about supporting capitalism. Yeah. Jeanette says, I think it should be mandatory that medications, vaccines, and supplements are made in the U.S. I'm not mad at that. I mean, you know, it really is. It would be bringing back manufacturing here. But that manufacturing has to be coupled with what I like to call, well, not I like to call, but with a federal jobs guarantee, basically meaning that the federal government would take it upon itself in order to build infrastructure, like, for instance, facilities that Big Pharma could use, not Big Pharma, but the pharmaceutical industry could use in order to manufacture and make medications here. But that also would mean that the people who work in those plants, that work in those offices, will also need to be paid a living or thriving wage. And because they are continuously profit seeking, they're not going to want to do that. So therefore, if they are only looking for profit, that means that they should not exist within the pharmaceutical sector. That means they should not exist within the healthcare industry. So therefore, I think that it should be taken over by the people. So yes, the people who work for so if we were to nationalize the pharmaceutical industry, yes, the people working in that industry will be paid well. Well, and by well, I mean a living wage or a thriving wage, right? And if you're not giving money to all shareholders, and if you're not having these CEOs and CFOs and COOs making all these millions and millions of dollars, then that money distributes a lot better among the workers. And thus, you also don't have to raise prices to pay these exorbitant amounts. Meaning that the people can actually afford the medications. And so then they don't have to pay and they don't have to worry about these medications being so expensive. Plus, the R&D is already done in our public universities and colleges anyway. So therefore, we might as well own the patents. We might as well. Michelle says we need to use hemp as a cash crop. It replaced plastics. It has no downside. It is a way to save the environment and stimulate industry. I'm going to be having on Joey Peltier back on in a few weeks. And so, you know, he's a big proponent of hemp, especially from an environmental perspective. And I think he would I think most likely he would agree with this. But yeah, I think that we should start using it more heavily, but it's too available. It's too easy. And it would mean that, you know, there's no profit in it because therefore the materials needed are not scarce. So that means you cannot charge more money for it because it's easy to get, it's easy to grow. People can grow hemp in their backyard. You know, we have Black Unigriffin coming in saying, James, Black Unigriffin. All right. Chris says, it's still kicking around in my mind that Keith McHenry said about putting drugs in the Black community to stop Black people from making demands of the GI Bill. Yeah. ultimately, a lot of the policies that were put in were really just about making sure that there is no equality. Because once you start to have equity and equality, that means that there could be more solidarity among people. There's less resentment between groups. If you have less resentment between groups, therefore that division that we have goes away. And then the division is more class division than it is identity division. I'm not saying that identity division, will completely go away. It will still exist, but it won't exist at the level that it does. And it won't be exacerbated by these issues that, the alphabet agencies put into place. And so therefore, like I said, people start talking and they start coming together. And then next thing you know, they start organizing and then they start to make things change. And so that's part of the process. And Michelle says nationalized healthcare would actually save so much money that we would need some offset in the budget, like a stimulus and better healthcare at no downside. I agree. It would actually save us billions upon billions of dollars a year because we're not paying that much I'm sorry, we're not paying that much. Sorry, I was reading a word. We wouldn't be paying that much into the pharmaceutical industry. And so therefore it would be a huge boom economically for all of us. All right, so let's get into this now. Oh, I forgot to do that. I forgot something. Hang on. Sorry. Make sure I have this in here. I just gotta make sure I read it. I can't believe I forgot this. I was running late, guys. I'm sorry. Okay. And let's do this. Alrighty. Now, let's go and give a shout out to the patrons on Patreon, and then we can move on to the next story. All right. So, guys, because of you guys, I am able to do this type of work day in and day out. This literally keeps the lights on. So thank you, and thank you. So here are the tiers for the Patreon. So we have Mega Jaybefaunters, Super Duper Jaybefaunters, Super Jaybefaunters, Jaybefaunters. We have Comrade, Solidarity, and JB members. And we want to welcome and thank new member, Mohammed Magzoub. Thank you so very much for joining and helping to keep the lights on. It is deeply appreciated. Thank you very much. And by the way, just to let you guys know, my channel is demonetized. So if you like to support the channel, you can support via Patreon or PayPal. So thank you very much for that. Now, where are we talking about next? So we're going to get into this. So we already talked with Keith McHenry about Trump slashing drug prices. So we got into that. Our next segment we're going to be talking about is the Newark mayor was detained. So this is the story that happened over the weekend, and I want to get into this. So New York mayor detained at an ICE facility. So let's get into that. So the mayor of Newark, Baraka, was recently detained in at a rally in Newark on the 9th of May when it comes to an ICE facility. Now, they wanted to inspect the ICE facility to see if it's above board, to see how it is doing in, how they're treating migrants there in New Jersey. And Baraka was there with a contingent of representatives that wanted to see inside of the facility. And so he tried to force his way in. And so instead of him, him peacefully leaving, he decided to try to force his way in. And so he was detained by agents. So let's get into this. This is the DHS body cam of it. So let's go.
Mayor of the largest city, you are here on private property. On private property.
All right, this is the last. I'm not man. Listen, this is the last warning.
Oh, as Congresswoman, let's show some respect. Show some respect.
All per man.
You have no respect.
Listen,
What does it mean?
Congressmen are different. Congresswomen are different. Mr. Mayor, anyone that is not a congresswoman or man, it's the last warning. You will be placed on
Mayor,
arrest.
just tell me. Don't rush it. Don't rush it.
No, please.
We at a gate. Back up.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor. Shame on you people.
They're saying that because he was on this side, that he
Where's my congresswoman? Where's my congresswoman?
So as far as this event has gone, as far as the mayor of Newark, this has been a story that a lot of people are talking about. It has created chaos. Let's get into this article here. It says Trump officials created confrontation that led to arrest of Newark mayor. Democratic Congress members who visited the detention center with mayor says ICE officials created the chaos. So right here in the middle, that's Ross Baraka, the mayor of Newark, New Jersey. So let's get into this. It says Trump administration Homeland Security officials were responsible for starting the confrontation on Friday at a New Jersey immigration jail that led to the arrest of Newark's mayor, as well as threats to detain 3 members of Congress, the representative said Sunday on CNN State of the Union. Democratic Representatives Bonnie Watson-Coleman, LaMonica McIver, and Rob Menendez, all of New Jersey, visited the controversial Immigration and Customs Enforcement Detention Center, also known as Delaney Hall, on Friday to inspect the facility. As they waited to enter Delaney Hall, Newark's mayor, Ross Baraka, arrived. And as he left the property, he was arrested outside by ICE officials accusing him of trespassing, leading to a commotion at the entrance of the jail. There evidently was shoving and pushing between federal immigration officials and the members of Congress, which Watson, Coleman, McIver, and Mendez blamed on the immigration officials. So this is another view of what was happening. So let's continue on in the article. It says on CNN State of the Union, Congress members said immigration officials had ample opportunity to de-escalate the situation before someone called in and instructed masked agents to arrest Baraka. They said that they created the confrontation, they created the chaos. Since the ordeal on Friday at Delaney Hall, Homeland Security officials have accused the Congress members of staging a bizarre political stunt there, while also accusing McIver of body slamming authorities at the scene. McIver rejected those allegations, as I honestly do not know how to body slam someone. There is no video that supports me body slamming anyone. We were simply there to do our job for an oversight visit. For their part, the officials have threatened to arrest 3 members of Congress in connection with Friday's commotion at Delaney Hall. Watson Coleman told CNN on Sunday that those threats stem from the Trump administration's determination to intimidate people in this country. Delaney Hall facility was recently reopened by ICE as the agency continues to expand its detention network to assist in the Trump administration's aspirations to carry out mass deportations. The facility operator said that it has the capacity to detain 1,000 people. Delaney Hall is owned by Geo Group, a massive private prison company with ICE facilities throughout the United States. The Trump administration in February gave a 15-year contract worth $1 billion to Geo Group to operate Delaney Hall. However, the new contract comes amid legal challenges to ICE detention in New Jersey. Newark's municipal government recently filed a lawsuit against Geo Group, claiming that the company did not have the proper permits to open the facility. There's also a separate legal battle playing out in federal appellate court related to private immigration detention in the state. In 2021, Phil Murphy, the New Jersey governor, signed into law barring immigration detention in the state. Another private prison company, CoreCivic, which runs the only other immigration jail in the state, sued New Jersey state government. CoreCivic received support from the Biden administration in its suit, and a federal judge ruled in favor of the company. The state challenged a federal judge's decision, and a federal appellate court heard arguments for the case only recently. So here's my take on this situation right here and right now. First of all, when it comes to these ICE detention facilities, one of my questions was, with the other ICE detention facilities, where were they in wanting to inspect these facilities when Joe Biden was president? Number one. Number two, when it comes to the detaining and deporting of undocumented immigrants, Joe Biden actually detained more undocumented immigrants than Donald Trump. He deported more undocumented immigrants than Donald Trump. Where were y'all when Joe Biden was doing that? A third thing I want to ask, because I have a family member that died because of the criminal justice system of New Jersey. Let me ask you this. Where have you guys been to investigate how people in New Jersey state prisons, both private and publicly owned prisons, how are they being treated, which largely have a lot of a large Black American population. Where were you guys in those facilities? Also, here's the thing. I don't trust Democrats or Republicans. Here's the thing. This, to me, is political theater. It's political theater. Because here's the issue, right? Number one, if you really cared about this, you would have did this under the Biden administration as well. I didn't see you do that. Number one. Number two, this is, oh my God, Trump is doing this mass deportation. To be honest with you, there was more mass deportation under Biden. There was even more mass deportation under Obama. Where were y'all? You guys were silent because it was your person that was in the chair, that was in the office, and you guys turned a blind eye. You were like, oh, I don't see it. I don't see it. This is basically like AOC going down to the border and crying. This is basically what that is. Also, there's word that the representatives were cleared to be able to go in and inspect, but the mayor of Newark was not cleared to go in. So it sounds like he just showed up and said, well, I'm the mayor of Newark, and let me just go in here and take a look-see and see what's going on. Which, I'm not against him going in, but at the same time, I'm like, did you plan for this? Did you submit something? And if not, then okay, fine. If you want to do that protest and get detained by ICE agents, okay. But if you're going to do it against Donald Trump, then you should have did it against Joe Biden too. Right? See, there's so much hypocrisy here. Because, number one, should these facilities be monitored? And people should see that the migrants that are detained are being taken care of in a humane way? Absolutely. But you're not just going to do it for one administration and not the other. That's the problem I have. Right? Remember, who built the cages that the kids were being kept in? Was it not Barack Obama? There's a famous picture of Jay Johnson, who was in the Obama administration, inspecting the cages. And yet, everybody was, shh, don't talk. Like Pops and Wayne's brothers, shh, don't tell nobody. What? There's hypocrisy here. Because you're willing to get detained by ICE agents under the Trump regime, but you're not willing to get detained by ICE agents under the Biden regime? In fact, you're just going to turn a blind eye and not say a damn thing? That's my question. What are you doing? Also, if we're going to go against these detention facilities, which are owned privately, then why aren't we doing the same thing to these private prisons that are being held, that are holding American citizens as well, that are being treated in this way? Where are the Democrats that are trying to, this is a completely different state, but where are the Democrats that are trying to force their way into Angola prison in Louisiana, where they literally got black men picking cotton in the heat of the day? You see what I mean? I feel like this is a part of the whole keep America divided by, this line of Democrat versus Republican, red versus blue. In reality, it should be, well, it's a human rights issue, and we should go after whoever violates the human rights issue, no matter the party. So what is now the mayor of Newark going to be the new darling of the Democratic Party now? Because he got detained by ICE? And the question is why in the world did you do it for others why did you do it for when your party was in power? There's hypocrisy there. Now, I'm of the opinion that undocumented immigrants should be treated with respect and dignity because they're human beings, right? But I would also like to see that you're looking at the citizens who are incarcerated in our own prisons as well. And I want you to force your way into those prisons as well. I want you to keep that same energy for for the prisons as well that are housing American citizens. I want you to keep that same energy. Because the food that they eat, there's times where they have, black mold that they have to breathe in. There's mold in the showers. They're not being taken care of. They have to worry about infestations. They have to worry about all this different stuff. Oh, but because they're prisoners, then therefore they don't deserve human rights. If you don't think that somebody in prison doesn't deserve human rights, then you're a sick individual. There's a lot of people in there that, of course, some people have done some wrong things, but they're paying their debt to society. And in doing so, you shouldn't subject them to a slow, agonizing death because they're in prison. And not everybody that's in prison is in there for doing something heinous. Some people are in there because the 3 strikes law. Some people are in there because they're in there even though it's not their fault. They were accused of doing something and they're being held there under false pretenses. There's so many different reasons why some people are in prison. Some of them are political prisoners. Like, think about people like Mumia Abu-Jamal, or think about people like Leonard Peltier. Think about a lot of the Black Panthers that were detained and put in prison for daring to fight against the system by feeding people and giving people health care and making sure that people are safe in these streets. So this is why when I look at both the Democrats and Republicans, I shake my head. Because ultimately, it's like, wait a minute. You fight against the Republican regime, but when the Democrat regime is in power, you don't say anything. And equally to the Republicans, I say, you guys fight very hard against the Democrats, but when the Republicans in office, you guys mum's the word. You guys have nothing to say. And so my question to Ross Baraka is, you going to do that against Biden? Or if Harris was president, would you do that against her? Question is, like, if you're not, then I think you should put up or shut up. So yeah, ultimately, I see this as a political stunt. It made the headlines. It made this show. But I'm not going at it the same angle as, let's say, MSNBC or CNN or anything like that. And also the question is, who benefits, right? Because now, guess what? This is going to be played on DNC or DNC affiliated either corporate media or by campaigns. Oh, we got to fight against Donald Trump. Look what he did to Baraka. When in reality, Joe Biden has been doing the exact same thing. Donate to our Act Blue, right? Meanwhile, there are Black Americans that are also sitting in prisons as well, that are suffering just like a lot of these migrants are. And I don't see you doing a damn thing for them. My thing is, yes, go into the migrant facilities and make sure they're taken care of. But just as equally, go into the prisons where you have people who are citizens of this country who are also being treated in an inhumane way, and make sure that heads will roll, because people need to be treated with dignity. That's why they're using migrants as a political pawn. That's what makes it so sick. They're using undocumented immigrants as a political pawn, and then in doing so, they don't care about actual citizens in this country too. And so this is why I say there's victims on both sides. There's victims who are undocumented immigrants that are being demonized and victimized, and then the ones who are forgotten are the American citizens, especially a lot of Black American citizens in New Jersey. And guess what? My family's Black American. And I got cousins and I have family members in the New Jersey State Penitentiary. And how are they doing? Are they doing okay? How's their health? Right? Look, look. Pick up Asada Shakur's autobiography and read her accounts of how things were in prison when she was in there. Because ultimately, look, they don't give a damn about none of us. They don't give a damn about migrants. They don't give a damn about citizens. They don't give a damn about any one of us. It's all a political ploy in order to keep it red versus blue, Democrat versus Republican, liberal versus conservative, when in reality, we all need to come together, baby. Because the thing is that they're doing this against all of us. Human rights are human rights. What do you think? Do you think this was just a political ploy, or do you think that it's legitimate that, oh, was the Trump administration so heinous that they're doing all these things? Or do you agree with people like myself who think, well, you know, the Trump administration is doing just exactly what the Biden administration did? The only difference is that you have Democrats that are willing to give all this smoke for Republicans, but they're not willing to give smoke to their own party. Let me know. Holla at it, brother. All right, so go ahead and give a like to the stream. Thank you so very much. Appreciate it. We're going to go into the comments in the chat after this card. Lordy Lord, I'm thinking about giving me some garlic parmesan wings later. My brother's hungry. Anyway, let's get to the comments. Let me check the Rumble to see if we have any other comments on the Rumble side. Looks like we're good on the Rumble side. We good. All right. All right, let's get into the rest of the chat. All right. Let me see. All right, so we're going to start off with All One Sane says he's grandstanding. He could have fought the building of the facility since he was around then, but no, we have theatrics. Unfortunately, that's what it looks like. Yeah. He said, you remember when AOC cried and pretended that she cared about ICE, right? Like she cried at the border. It was a great photo op. And look, that makeup looked a little too perfect. I'm sorry. I mean, look, I am not a makeup artist, but for some reason, it looked like she got to do a little contour too. But I could have been wrong. But Price Smith says they're blurring faces now. Like, right? Like, y'all came out there knowing that there will be cameras. You guys are all adults, and now they're blurring faces? Like, what? My goodness. Amy says, is he a Dem? Will Dems get up in arms about his arrest now, even though they're sneered at Stein when she was arrested? Oh, good. Oh, my gosh. Right? Because here's the thing. You had Jill Stein that was protesting the treatment of Palestinians, right? She was there on the front lines, and she got detained. And guess what? Where was the Democrats then? Where was the Republicans then? What is everybody talking about? Oh my God, free speech, free speech, free speech. Jill Stein gets arrested. Crickets. Silence. Quiet. That was it. Nothing. Nothing. All One Same says he's trawling for governor. Probably. I wouldn't be surprised. You see, Neuro Riot says hello there to you. Jason says fake arrest publicity stunt. He didn't have a problem when they were detaining individuals during the Biden administration. When he was mayor of Newark, he worked with police to permit the imprisonment of migrants. Bam. Whoop, there it is. So did he really care? Or was he just BSing us? Look, at that whole thing, I was like, right. Jason says, agree, JB. Actually went to on PBS News to say if they had paperwork, he's not going to get involved. My goodness. You guys are funny to talk about AOC's invisible handcuffs. Oh my goodness. Chris says, can we do a segment looking into ICE deportations under Obama and Biden? Because it seems like this hypocrisy reaction is happening because no one knew it was happening under Obama and Biden. You got to remember also that a lot of the media is also part of that division, where you have media that upholds the Democratic Party, and you have some media that upholds the Republican Party. And so the ones that uphold the Democratic Party will be like, oh my God, the Republicans are doing all these things, whereas the Democratic Party is doing the same thing. Their mum's the word. They don't want to say anything about it. And then the Republican Party will be like, oh my God, the Democratic Party is doing all these horrible things. But then a Republican president or a Republican regime, I like to call it, does anything, then they have nothing to say. So either Democrat regime or Republican regime, they're both doing the exact same thing. It's just one side will speak out and the other one will stay silent, or the other side will speak out and the other side will stay silent. It's just a game that they play. It's really a game of division, right? And that's how they play the working class. That's how they play the working people, the American people. It's this binary thinking that either you're on this side or you're on that side, when in reality, it's really top versus down. Yep, All in Same says Geo Group is making bank on prisoners. Yep, absolutely. Just ask some hip hop artists. Because they were in on that meeting. They were in on that meeting about how they wanted to make more money. And so what do? They push certain subjects, they push certain themes and narratives within hip hop so that it encourages young people to do reckless shit. And then once they do that reckless shit, and guess what? Then they end up in prison. And then they end up being that slave labor that they've always wanted. They've been licking their chops to get their hands on that slave labor back again. And that's what they're doing. And guess what? You don't think it's not happening under immigration detention? Come on now. Human Rights for All says the same NGO group that runs 3 concentration camps in Palestine, Israel's occupation of over 10,000 Palestinian women, children, and men. They were near European Gaza hospital. The Democrats, around 26 Republicans are the same. Yeah. Let me see. Katie Lewis says, who's also part of the Orlando RBN chapter, says some people just take plea deals to avoid trial based on the encouragement of their defense attorneys. That's another point. Some people are in prison because they had taken a plea deal, even though they were innocent, and they were coerced. They were put under duress in order to take a plea deal because they were in fear of, if I go to trial, then it'll be even worse for me. So I might as well just ride this out, even though I'm not guilty. That's what they do. That's what they do. That's the horrors of the criminal justice system. Thank you very much for bringing that out too. Let me see. Christy says, small fact, Geo Group is headquartered in Boca Raton. Okay. All right. Roger says, DM started 6-minute screen record with Jason Black, emphasizing your point. After that, me telling Larry my plan to resolve homelessness plus my big pharma CBI. What anniversary at N plus bonus? Okay. Let me take a look. Let's see. Roger, this is a lot. I don't know if I'll be able to have time to read this. Okay. All right. I don't know if I'll be able to watch this entire thing. I'll just see if I can just get the gist of it.
happening. It's not accidental when you see this. That's not an accident. And the fact that they can get mobilized for this, where they come and tell you and me about all they damn excuses and about what they can't do, and nobody can answer the phone, and you got to play damn me Where's Waldo to find people, and we got real issues going on out here. We got real issues going on, and your representatives are trying to see what they can do for illegals. Now, when Joe Biden and his Injustice Department were running interference to let Carolyn Bryant off the hook, these were the same niggas sitting there quiet as church mice. Didn't say nothing, didn't do nothing. Furthermore, ain't saying anything and not doing anything today. They weren't saying or doing anything then, and they're not saying or doing anything now. They are quick to turn their ass up at us and show us, oh, you're a non-issue. Oh, you're not an issue. You don't really matter. And then you've got the unmitigated gall to sit up here and show up in person, and you throwing your little elbows at ICE agents. And yet you ain't throwing elbow one with Joe Biden and Kamala Harris didn't say a word when it actually mattered.
I'm going to pause right there. Also, where were they when Kamala Harris was doing all this stuff against the Black community in California that she was doing? Why weren't they speaking out against her then when she was the Attorney General? You know what I mean? Like, they didn't. They kept their mouth shut. The Congressional Black Caucus, like, where were you? Why didn't you rhetorically yoke up Kamala Harris over what she was doing as Attorney General? Why did it take Tulsi Gabbard to lay out her record for everybody to see? And then people go, ooh. Cory Booker, why? You were one of the only Black Americans on that stage in 2020 that were running for president, and you could have laid her out, but you didn't. You kept quiet. Goodness.
Who are they representing, people? Who are they representing? Who are they actually representing? I have seen and tolerated some absolutely disgusting things over the course of the last decade, but this right here makes the top 5. We've gone way beyond Elijah Cummings and John Lewis literally yelling and crying for the illegal alien babies. Not a word for Tamir Rice or the Black children gunned down. Not a word for them. Not a word for Emmett Till. Didn't say a word for him. And now they can sit up here and go out in the rain or the cold or whatever the weather is in New Jersey. Now they can get mobilized, and this is the issue. This right here, this is their red line. This is the line you can't cross here. Everything that the system was doing to us, there wasn't no red line for them.
So one thing I will say, now I don't have a lot of, I have a lot of disagreements with Jason Black. One thing I will say is that I think it's fine to have, in fact, I think it is necessary to have the empathy for people who are undocumented in this country because of what U.S. foreign policy entails. With that being said, I think we should also hold that same amount, same space of empathy for our own people. It should not be one above the other. I don't think it should. We should be willing and able to hold just as much zeal and fire in wanting to help our own community as well as undocumented immigrants. I think that the empathy should be across the board. The problem is that the empathy is only one-sided, but that is on purpose to create a division. It is to create resentment between groups in order to make it so that, oh, well, we resent the illegals because they're coming in and they're getting all these benefits, and we're not getting a thing, and we're citizens. But that's by design, because they want to keep us divided. And by they, I mean the corporate powers, the corporate dictators, the politicians that are the lackeys of the corporate dictators. That's what it is. This is all about keeping the workers divided, and so they can continue to keep conquering us. And that's what it's about. And what Baraka did is also a part of that process too. Let me continue.
That wasn't the crash out zone for them. But this right here, this now it's time to crash out. Now you done crossed the line. Now you violated their space. Now you've done it. Now you've done it. So going forward, there is a reason why it's very clearly shaping up for 2026. Vote the couch. We ain't down ticketing nothing. You don't have any representation. Please understand, every single one of you Democrats, every single one has been voting, moving, stomping to do anything and everything they can for illegals. For illegals. Fighting for any law, any statute, any bogus court case. I mean, they're going above and beyond anything and everything they can do, legal or otherwise, for illegals. For them. Just them. You and me show up, and then all of a sudden we're told what they can't do. Oh, hell, if we get that far, because they don't even answer the phone. They won't even answer the phone when we show up for it. Well, Jason, what are you doing tonight's program for here? I am doing their absolute worst nightmare. Jason, what is that? You see, we're not supposed to have this kind of conversation right here. What they have been counting on for the last 40 years is that every time they sit up here and do something bogus like this, we all gonna sit up here, got to get Trump, got to get Trump. We ain't got to get a damn thing. Not when you sitting up here fighting for the enemies. We don't have to do a damn thing. We're not supposed to have these kind of conversations. The reason why support for the Democrats has softened over the last decade is because there's been a steady drumbeat of what I'm doing here tonight, and nobody can argue against it. No one can tell you why this is legitimate and they should get a pass for the last 15 years. Nobody can do that. Actually, you all, let me take it even further. You do realize that Barack Hussein Obama was signaling that he wanted to run for president back in 2006, right? What? You realize? What? You realize? We're at 20 years. We are at.
Sorry, it keeps freezing. But I think we got the gist of it. But for the most part, well, I think the resentment that is felt is really part of the ploy to keep us divided. You know, it's sad because the thing is, like, ultimately it causes people to harbor that resentment because they feel like that their country has abandoned them, right? But that's how the system works. The system works in order to, you know, make it so that we don't come together as a block, really, to fight against it. In reality, there are victims on multiple fronts. And so, you know, while I have some disagreements with Jason, I will say that they are leaving us out on purpose because they know that they can't deport us. Or at least for right now, they can't. They're trying to figure out a way how to, but they can't for now. Listen to this.
So if we were a ballot initiative state, this is what I would run.
Okay.
50% of the housing market in each county must be decommodified. By removing housing from the speculative market and exploring alternative models like community land trusts and limited equity cooperatives, where residents, rather than corporations, private equity groups, and real estate owns and control housing. Well-maintained, state-of-the-art, reliable, and responsive within a week when it comes to attending tenants' needs, allowing housing to be in a perpetual state of affordability. So that's what I would like.
I worry about the mandated part, as always. I'm open to all these alternative ideas. I always am. Every time you call and give me alternative ideas, I'm always like, yeah, okay, that could work. What I would rather do is do a test case and have government support a test case to see how this stuff works. And when I say support, I don't mean be involved. I mean the opposite. Leave them alone. Let it work. Don't get involved. Let it work and see if these types of things work. Once these work, people will jump on. So I'd rather go that route. But I get where you're going.
Yeah, that's cool. But also, it's a stereotype.
Because I think it could work.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
It's also a stereotype that business runs things more efficient.
One more quick call.
Go out of business, but a lot of times they make more money by being inefficient.
That's rare, unless if that's only works if they're being funded by something other than the market.
Jim, Dansville.
If they're being funded by something else, they can. I'm up against the call, Roger. I gotta let you go. Let me grab.
All right. So let me see here. Okay, so he worries about the mandate for homelessness, and says decommodify housing, shifting away from viewing housing as a commodity to be bought and sold for profit instead of treated as a basic human right, ensuring access to safe, stable, and housing for all. This involves removing housing from the speculative market and exploring alternative models like community land trust and limited equity cooperatives. So this is a little bit different than what we were talking about as far as the subject. I think this has to do with what we were talking about with Keith McHenry. So yeah, says I have an idea for a CBI amendment that gives us a right that state government offer its own government alternative to pharmaceutical industry by investing public in to create and expand research and development teams at state and city universities along with other public institutions to create generic free life-saving drugs. Once there has been a breakthrough, it will be introduced and offered to the public free of charge. That no one is bound to take the government alternative drugs. Humans will not be used as involuntary guinea pigs to be experimented on without their knowledge. New drugs will not be released until it has thoroughly gone through several test trials to make it sure that it's safe for the public to take. You see, now, if your public institutions, state and city universities already do the research, then just a simple amendment that says once they come to a breakthrough, then it is offered to the public for free, completely cutting the pharmaceutical industry out and making them go under. I agree with that. You see. So, okay. So you're talking about some trivia there. Thank you very much for that, Roger. All right, so let me see. Katie Lewis says, I agree with the sentiment that Black American voters need to abandon the party that has abandoned us, but the ire needs to be towards the party, not the more marginalized and disadvantaged population. Agreed. Yeah. Jason says it is very dangerous because most individuals don't have access to those making the decision over our lives. So blame those around us only will further destroy our communities like crabs in a barrel. Yeah. And yes, Roger says the last link I sent was the 40th anniversary today of the move bombing in Philadelphia. Yeah. So, yeah, that's another thing, everybody, is that today is the 40th anniversary. It was right before my first birthday. So, yeah, I was still a baby when the move bombing happened, and I was across the bridge. So, yeah. You see, Roger says Jason wasn't blaming migrants and immigrants. He was blaming the Democratic Party. He was putting the onus on the government. It kind of sounds like he's kind of blaming both. Maybe I'm wrong, but it sounds like he kind of blames both. But at the same time, you know, maybe I'm hearing a little bit differently than you, but it kind of sounds like that. But at the same time, I think, you know, me and him were largely saying a lot of the same. All right, so let's go into the final segment that we're going to be talking about today. Oh, I've been waiting to get into this. Oh, I've been waiting to get into this. This is going to be so good. So I want to end on a positive note. So this is going to be good. Oh, you guys are going to love this. All right. So are you guys ready to have a smile on your face? Yeah. Okay. So this is a local story, but it'll make you happy. So we already had on Keith McHenry to talk about Trump slashing drug prices. Then we talked about the Newark mayor being detained. So we did discuss that. Now we're about to talk about medical debt cleared. So this is going to be a great story. I hope you guys are prepared for this. This is going to be one where I think you guys are going to walk away from this stream feeling more hopeful. And that's what I want. I want you guys to feel more hopeful for this, okay? So let's get into this. Medical debt cleared in Orange County? No, that ain't so. Oh, it's going to be good. Oh, I can't believe it. This story is so good. It's just juicy. It's juicy in a good way. And look, this story is wholesome. And I am proud. I am proud of the activists that have done this in our community. And Katie, you're gonna see a familiar face. You're gonna see a familiar face. And Tim and Sabiha, if you guys are watching, you're gonna see a familiar face, and you're actually gonna smile, right? Okay. All right. So when it comes to medical debt, I will be one of the first people to say I have a lot of medical debt. I hope I get the letter. I don't know. I hope I get the letter, but But a lot of people are getting their medical debt cleared here in Orange County, Florida. This has proven to be not just a pleasant shock, but a very welcome surprise among many people in Orange County. So what I want to do first is I'm going to go to the article, and then we'll go to the news report, because I think this is going to be this is going to be part. I want to set us up. So let's go to our local news station. What's that? Why won't this thing? No, I don't want that. No. Okay. All right. So it says 310,000 Central Floridians poised to get medical debt wiped out. Oh my goodness. So this was on April 29th, 2025. It says in Orlando, Florida, hundreds of thousands of Central Floridians are about to discover their medical debt has been wiped away. Next month, Orange County will begin notifying families that their debt was part of a $4.5 million program to erase debt funded by the pandemic-era American Rescue Plan. County staff says they've already spent $3 million of that funding in partnership with the nonprofit Undo Medical Debt. Recipients did not need to apply for the program. Instead, they were included if their household income was less than approximately $129,000 threshold for a family of four based on the 400% federal poverty guideline, or their debt exceeded 5% of their annual household income. Eligible debt is identified through partnerships with hospitals, healthcare providers, and collectors, then purchased directly by Undo Medical Debt, a commissioner's memo reported. Once acquired, the debt is fully forgiven and residents are notified by mail. This effort marks a significant step towards financial stability and improved quality of life for many in our community. It continues. It says, since debt can be purchased for a fraction of its value, the total amount expected to be eliminated under the program is $472.5 million, affecting 310,000 residents. The county plans to publish more detailed press release about the forgiveness milestone next week. For additional information about the county's partnership with Undo Medical Debt and a list of frequently asked questions, here's the website. So basically that's it. So this 310,000 Central Floridians, that is massive. That is a good thing, a very good thing, because there's so many of us, whether we have medical debt through, doctors' offices, hospitals. Of course, we have Orlando Health, we have Advent Health, right? We have those hospital systems here. You have different, internal medicine and anesthesiologist offices and all these other different places where they they send look, child, let me show y'all something while I'm here. Let's see if it shows. That's not it. Let me see. Do I have it? Oh, okay. Let me share this with y'all. see if there's any okay, there's no sensitive information. Okay, so let me take this down. Here's a text I got from one of the major hospital systems in Central Florida called Advent Health, right? It says make sure this is bright enough. Okay. It says, hello from Advent Health. You have a final notice statement for $1,767.77. Please review and take action to avoid being sent to collections. So I don't know if you guys can see that. It's kind of bright. But I got a text message basically saying I owe over $1,700. And that's with insurance. Can I afford that? And I would hate to see the bill that comes from the transplant surgery. Oh my God. Transplant surgery? Oh, that's before the transplant. Can you imagine what the transplant surgery? How much in debt I am in now? This is why I had to create a spot fund to help me pay for medical expenses. I may have to raise the amount too, because I'm gonna be real with you. Like, I have to pay copays for the medications, and then of course I have to pay for doctor visits and stuff. I have to pay, just to be able to get. You know how much it costs to go that back and forth from here to Tampa? How much money in gas? And I don't have a car, so I have to pay somebody, gas money. And so medical debt is a real thing, and it's debilitating for so many of us, including myself. And also, I haven't showed you guys the debt that I owe to the dialysis center. 17 years of dialysis. And the treatment by itself is $400. That's $400 each treatment, 3 times a week, 52 weeks a year, for 17 years. That's not counting for the medications that are applied. That's not accounting for extra dialysis treatments. That's not accounting for a lot of different things that are applied as well. It's just the treatment by itself is $400 each treatment. So you guys do the math. Of course, also the doctor's appointments that I've had to have, whether I went through Orlando Health, whether I went through Advent Health, whether I went through Tampa General for my transplant surgery, the bills that I had to pay to my primary care physician, the bills that I had to pay for my cardiologist, the bills that I had to pay for my nephrologist, the bills I had to pay to the anesthesiologist, right? The bills I had to pay for the imaging, all these different things. So I get debt collectors all the time. So help. I got a bill from the Orlando Fire Department just to be able to transport me to the hospital back in February. So just to let you guys know, it's a lot. And so for this story, for people to be able to get this relief, it's a weight off their shoulders. Just think about the weight that's lifted when you don't have that debt hanging over you anymore. Now, let's go into this. I want to share this report because this came out 2 days ago. So this is going to be lovely. Let's get into it.
Of Orange County residents are getting letters in the mail telling them that their medical debt has been cleared. It comes after Orange County commissioners decided to use leftover COVID funds on a medical debt relief program. Channel 9's Sabrina Maggiore is live in Orlando tonight. Sabrina, people getting these letters say this is literally life-changing.
Yeah, Martha, people we've spoken to say they didn't believe it at first, but these letters are legitimate. So if you get one of those letters in the mail, you're going to want to save it. It's not a scam. It means you're one of more than 300,000 Orange County residents who's now having their medical debt cleared.
It says, we are sending this letter to share the good news.
Pamela Bryan says she read this letter with a healthy dose of skepticism. It was hard to believe more than $1,400 of medical debt she's owed since 2021 was suddenly wiped away.
I thought it was a scam at first.
She works a full-time job, but that still means counting on every paycheck to make ends meet. Even after insurance, the unexpected hospital visit years ago wasn't a bill she could afford.
They're asking you for $400 up front. No, I'm not able to do that because something at my house will be behind.
Thousands of Orange County residents who meet income qualifications are now getting similar letters.
We like to say that medical debt is not a debt of choice, it's a debt of necessity.
Orange County partnered with the nonprofit Undo Medical Debt to make it happen. They gave the organization $4.5 million in leftover COVID funds to wipe away the debt after advocates like Sam Delgado packed county commission asking for medical debt relief.
People feel like they're not able to go and seek preventative health care because they don't want to worsen the existing financial strain that they have.
Without that.
So first of all, I want to give a shout out to this guy. Very active in the community. And yes, I know this guy. Sweetheart of a guy. And absolutely loves the community and does whatever he can, right? And when I saw this, I was like, whoa, Sam, right? There are people out there who really do care, who love the people, who love the community. This is a good example, right? Shout out to Sam, by the way. Tim, Katie, you guys know him. And the fact is that there are a lot of people who are doing what they can to make sure that we're good. And the thing is like one of the biggest things that hangs over our head is all this debt that gives us disease of despair. If you're trying to recover from a surgery, a procedure, whatever it may be, is it really fair and just that you have this debt hanging over your head now? Is that fair? I don't think it's fair. I personally have the same opinion of Denzel Washington's character in John Q. Sick, help. Sick, help. There's nothing else. That's it. That's all. And the fact is, we could do this on a massive scale so that people won't ever have to be in medical debt ever again. And here is it going on a local level in my city, in my county, right? Good news. Imagine getting that letter out of the blue, in the mail. Your debt is cleared. Imagine. I wouldn't be surprised if people started shedding a few tears of gratitude. I'll be looking at you crazy if you didn't. I know sure as hell I would be. And so this is why I wanted to save this for the end, because I want you guys to realize this can be done anywhere in the country. Look, I'm telling you right now, people can pull their resources together, especially those of you who are class traders, who y'all got a few coins in the bank. Could you guys pull your resources together, create a foundation that actually buys the debt and then clears the debt? Could you do that? Because some of you who are class traders, who got a little bit of a trust fund. Y'all got a little coin. Y'all got a few coins. Could y'all come together and clear somebody's medical debt as a form of mutual aid for the community? Because you guys can literally buy medical debt for pennies on the dollar. They bought it with $3 million, and it was over $400 million of debt that they cleared with $3 million. That was it. Imagine you just get a few people who got a trust fund, who instead of investing in some big corporation, they could use that money to go, you know what? I want to do some mutual aid with this. I want to do some good. Let's clear out the debt for these people. Imagine the mental health boost you're giving to people. I can't wait to shake this comrade's hand next time I see him. I'm giving this comrade a hug when I see him. Of course, I'm gonna have to mask up because immunocompromised now. So, but yeah. And can we assist in ways in which to help foundations like this in order to help people? We may not have the resources to contribute to it, but can we use our energy and our time to be able to do something like this? To help people? Let's continue. Let's finish this up.
Strain that they have.
Without that debt on her credit report, Bryant says the dream of one day owning her own house now seems possible.
Thank you, Orange County government. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Hang on. She says now that she could actually clear that out, it's off of her credit, which means that she could possibly buy her house. What? This could be, look, you could literally be helping people financially be able to own their own homes. Imagine, like, some people don't realize when you're trying to get an apartment, they do what's called a credit check. And once you get that credit check, then based on your credit, you could be denied an apartment. What if medical bills contributes to you failing that credit check? But now it's cleared, and now you can get an apartment. Also, by the way, just because you have roommates doesn't mean you can actually pass a credit check, because each roommate will have to pass a credit check in order for you to be able to be approved. Trust me, I know. So just think about that. You're giving hope, giving possibilities to people by doing things like this.
And if you get one of these letters, you don't need to take any actions. But again, you do want to save the letters for your records. So far, undue medical debt has used about $3 million of that $4.5 million. But because they buy debt in bulk, they've actually been able to clear about $470 million worth of debt for Orange County residents. Reporting live in Orlando, I'm Sabrina Majori, Channel 9 Eyewitness News.
Doesn't that make you happy? Doesn't that make you, doesn't that just, it's infectious? Just think of the good that we can do for our fellow neighbors, man. Just think about it. It's a beautiful thought, man. Yeah. I hope you guys got some good feels out of this one. I definitely did. And this was actually the one story I was actually the most excited to talk about today. And you can see why. I'm happy for my neighbors. And I hope my neighbors, I hope that they feel light today. I hope they're walking on clouds right now. You know? Because I'm happy to see my community win. Go ahead and give a like to the stream. Go ahead and also give a like to, the neighbors who are, doing or sleeping just a little bit better today than they were yesterday. So thank you so very much for that. Appreciate it so very much. We're going to go into the chat and then we'll head on out. All right. So let's go into this. Let's check on the Rumble side to see if we got any comments. Looks like we're good on the Rumble side. All right. So let's go into the comments in the chat and let's see what we got here. So I'm going to start off with the Orlando RBN chapter peeps. So we have Tim saying, I got around 3,000 from my hernia surgery. Man. Katie says, I use that bill for toilet paper. It gives it some use. That paper's kind of rough. You might want to wet it down just a little bit to soften it. It's kind of like sandpaper down there. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. All right, let's continue on. Let me see. Let me see. Let me see. Oh, Roger says, Jay, I think Nelson said he's running for office. Yes, he told me that too. I got to get Nelson Betancourt back on. But yes, he's running for office. And I think it's going to be, I think it's a nonpartisan position. So yeah, I think I'm going to try to get him on. Let me see. Amy says, it's about time. More of this, please. Yep. Insert this into my veins. All right. Let me see. Bryce says, we already know you ain't paying that, JB. It's funny. Sometimes I wish I could afford to pay it because, if you can afford to, then, hey, why not? But I can't, right? Like, look, my channel's demonetized. Like, I ain't making money like that. I'm on a fixed income. And that fixed income is going to go away within less than a year because, now that I have a working kidney now, and hopefully I'll be able to get a job at least with somewhere close to a living wage. But, I live in America and I'm Black. So, do with that what you will. Yeah. Yeah. Bryce says many ignored phone calls. Yep. If I don't see your name, and plus I'm not waiting for the call for the kitty no more. So I get to screen them calls. I'm like, yeah, I'm not picking up. Let me see. Let me see. Hillier Grigor says, my close friend had a heart and kidney transplant due to COVID back in 2021. After a 4-month stay in the ICU and all the bells and whistles that come with it, copay is million. That person is left on the hook for $2 million. Yeah. Yeah, man. I'm telling you, boy, this is why I call for a full nationalization of our healthcare system, because nobody should be on the hook for $2 million to just live their lives, to be healthy. Nope, I don't believe in that. And the fact is that we got people who are on the hook for that. And it's like, how are they ever going to pay all that back? Most times they'll never be able to pay it back. Jenny, you getting a little thirsty, huh? I'm gonna make sure he sees this. Make sure he sees your name. Oh my goodness. Kerry Grigor says, Doc says he's got about 10 years extension in life and has no reason or to pay it back. Yeah. Yeah. Tim says, nice, Sam. Yep, absolutely. And yes, Jenna, that must have felt amazing to get that passed. Yes. Yes. Oh my goodness. It is crazy. This is an interesting point. Amy says, I always find it funny that the anti-abortion crowd never addresses how much it costs in this country to have a baby. You're right. You're right. I mean, it costs somewhere north of $14,000 just to have a kid. And Trump is trying to say, oh, we'll give you $5,000 if you have a baby. That ain't going to cover all the cost. You better be willing to give them $25,000 per kid. My gosh. Either that or make it free in this country to have a baby. Oh my goodness. You know what I'm saying? Let me see. Yep. Terry says, best story I've seen today. Yep, absolutely. Take this with y'all. All right. Roger says, DM, this proves that with state-by-state strategy, when something happens in one state, it then proliferates to other states. Hang on. Dream on, dream away. Sorry, I'm getting songs stuck in my head. Okay. All right, Raj, what you got? Okay, it says, New York has passed legislation aimed at protecting consumers from the negative consequences of medical debt, including prohibiting the reporting of medical debt to credit agencies. This legislation, signed by Governor Hochul, prevents medical debt from appearing on credit reports, thus avoiding potential negative impacts on credit scores. Additionally, the state has enacted laws to ensure that hospitals and healthcare providers provide clear and understandable financial information to patients. So here's a more detailed look at the New York efforts to address medical debt. All right. Says Fair Medical Debt Reporting Act, says the act effective December 13, 2023, prohibits hospitals, healthcare professionals, and ambulance providers from reporting medical debt to credit agencies. This means medical debt cannot appear on a consumer's credit report, regardless of when it was incurred. Hospital Financial Assistance Program. The state has extended its hospital finance assistance programs to make them more accessible and inclusive for low-income New Yorkers. Limitations on hospital litigation. New York is working to limit the ability of hospitals to sue patients. Hang on. Especially those with low incomes for medical debt. Plain language billing and financial liability forms. New York is requiring hospitals to provide plain language bills to patients and standardized financial liability forms used by all hospitals and healthcare professionals. Medical debt relief programs. The city of New York is also investing in programs to purchase and forgive medical debt for low-income residents. Yeah, you know what this reminds me of? This reminds me of when John Oliver in his show Last Week Tonight, he purchased like millions of dollars of medical debt and just cleared it for a bunch of people. That's what he did. Like, he's basically a liberal, and there's many things that I disagree with him on, not because he doesn't believe like human rights and things like that. Like, we agree on that, but he is more aligned with like the Democratic Party, which doesn't really do a damn thing for us anymore. But the fact that he did that, I think, was pretty badass. I think it was pretty awesome. And so I would like to see that on a massive scale here in this country. And we shouldn't have to have medical debt in the first place. It shouldn't exist. So that's one thing I think. I appreciate that. All right, so I'm going to. Oh, Amy says, yeah, Oliver beat on Stein and claimed she didn't understand how to forgive student debt, but he wouldn't allow her on his show. Yeah, that's a whole nother thing. Like, John Oliver should have been able to have her on, but of course, a lot of times these liberal pundits, they don't want somebody to their left to actually come on and challenge them. That's a whole nother reason. And I really don't watch like John Oliver like that anymore anyway, because it's like he'll diagnose the problem, but when it comes to actual solution, he'll dance around it and try to go the reform route. When in reality, we don't need reform. We need revolution to cause reform. That's what it is. But yeah, some people are too scared to do that. Anyway, but yes. So let me check and see, who do I have coming up next? Oh, okay. So I'm doing a podcast on the 19th. Oh wait, I'm sorry, I'm something personal. And then, oh my gosh, in a couple of weeks, my niece graduates. She's gonna be graduating high school. It's gonna be awesome. Okay. All right. So I'm gonna be looking forward to doing some readings this week for the rest of the week. Always doing that. Of course, the next reading is going to be Of Water and the Spirit. And then we're going to be getting back into The Will to Change by Bell Hooks. And then once again, we'll be getting to Presidential by Mark Kimberly. So we're going to be getting in that. And then on top of that, look for the Savvy and JB show this Thursday. And so, yeah, that's it. All right, everybody. Thank you so very much, for tuning in. Thank you so very much for trusting, and standing by me, through all this, health, issues and victories that I've been going through. Yeah, it's officially been a month since my transplant surgery yesterday. So I'm a month in, and like emotionally, I've been in like this positive headspace, which I am happy about. And so, yeah, it's going to be, I'm going to try to do more as the doctors start clearing me to go out and do things. So, hey, sky's the limit. So thank you so very much to everybody. So with that being said, going to head on out. And yeah, what do I always say to all of you? Water your plants, water yourselves, leave the world better than you found it. Smoke them if you got them, drink them if you got them. If you ain't got them, then watch something funny, because joy is revolutionary. And think about what you can do for your fellow neighbors. And also treat yourself once in a while, man. You know, community starts with you. Make sure you treat yourself and don't be so down on yourself, man. You're human. You make a mistake, you correct it, and then you move on. Because nobody's perfect, but everybody can be good in some way. All right, everybody. I will see y'all in the next one. Forehead kisses. I'll catch you guys later. Thank you so very much for watching my channel, and I deeply appreciate it from the top and bottom of my heart. If you wish to support the channel further, so I can keep bringing you content that is educational and informative, you can become a patron on patreon.com/Jaybefaunt. You can find that link in the pinned comment or in the description below. No matter what you give, you'll be supporting independent media and education that helps make the world better. Thank you so much, and you can watch more of my content here. Mwah. Forehead kisses, and have a beautiful day.